Chapter 204. All afraid of Shao Qingyuan. Shao Qingyuan asked again, "Otherwise what?" The man slowly turned his head away, and his face instantly turned pale. He could not speak for a long time. He stammered for a long time, but could not express himself clearly. Shao Qingyuan's face was cold as he looked at Li Xianquan. "Who asked you to come here?" Li Xianquan was a little braver than her man, but not by much. She said softly, I came to the workshop to work. No need. Get lost." Li Xianquan shrunk her neck and tried her best to defend herself. "This isn't your workshop. If you say you don't need me, then I'm not needed? This is my workshop." Shao Qingyuan stared at her and said word by word. Li Xianquan's eyes widened, and so did the others present. Then they all turned to look at Yundong. The latter shrugged. "Yes, this workshop is indeed a collaboration between Shao Qingyuan and me. He introduced me to young Master Lu and made a guarantee so that young Master Lu would lend me money. That was why I opened the workshop, so this workshop is half Shao Qingyuan's." This was what they had discussed in private. After all, this was easy to accept. If everyone knew that Shao Qingyuan had actually saved a few hundred taels of silver, who knew how much trouble he would cause? Therefore, they might as well borrow Lu Wei's name and use it. Perhaps it could even serve as a deterrent. As expected, when she said this, the villagers' gazes became complicated. However, for some reason, a few people quietly retreated. Yundong's eyes lit up. "Oh my! So, Shao Qingyuan had such an effect?" When Li Xianquan and her husband heard this, they turned around and left, not daring to say anything about going to the workshop to work. The originally noisy crowd also began to discuss softly. Then a large group of people left. There was no need for Yundong to emphasize the recruitment conditions. Shao Qingyuan was like a stabilizing force. He stood there, and many people who were originally scheming left. The rest were villagers whose families were really in trouble and needed this job, as well as people who didn't have any conflicts with Shao Qingyuan and didn't feel guilty or afraid. But there were still too many people, so Yundong could only choose a few. In the end, 8 men and 3 women were left behind. They were all in their prime, including Dong Xiulan, the Lu family of 3, and the village chief's second son, Chun Jinbao. There were a total of 16 people. After confirming the candidates, Yundong took out a contract and read the terms to them. If there were no objections, they would press their thumbprints and start work in 2 days. Only one woman objected and did not sign the contract. Yundong did not force her. The 16 people became 15. Yundong explained the things to take note of and also said that this was a short-term job that would only last for 4 to 5 months. However, if it was suitable, the work would continue next year. When the workshop was built, it would be even more standardized. Short-term work could also become longer. No one had any objections when they heard that. At this time, there was no farming to do, and it was difficult to find things to do outside. They sat at home all day and ate food without work. They were also anxious, not to mention that the Gu family paid them a lot of money and the work was not heavy. When the 16 of them went home, their families were happy. They all urged them to do their best and strive to stay after the workshop was built next year. After everyone left, Yundong put away the contract. He then had the time to ask Shao Qingyuan, "Who is Li Xianquan?" Chapter 205. She's from the Li family. Shao Qingyuan's expression was cold. "Someone from the Li family." Yundong did not understand at first. After a while, he reacted. "The Li family? Wasn't it the family that adopted Shao Qingyuan? This shameless person actually dared to come over even though she knew that Shao Qingyuan lived nearby." After Shao Qingyuan left, Madame Dong said to her that Li Xianquan is only a year younger than Qingyuan. She has been domineering since she was young. When Qingyuan was young, she bullied him countless times. Later on, she got married and even came back every other day to cause trouble for Qingyuan. It was only when old Master Li passed away and Qingyuan stopped indulging them that the Li family stopped. What she didn't say was that half of Li Xianquan's man's hair had been cut off by Shao Qingyuan. He was so frightened that he peed his pants. He had not been to Yongfu village for more than half a year. They did not expect him to appear again today. He deserved to be taught another lesson. After Madame Dong finished speaking, she glanced at Gu Yundong's expression and sighed softly. Qingyuan is actually quite a good person. As long as you don't anger him, he won't teach you a lesson. Look at those people who are so afraid of him. Which one of them doesn't deserve it? Our family has been his neighbor for so long. If we really need his help, he will come immediately without a word. Don't think that he hasn't married yet. That's because others have ruined his reputation and don't understand his character. Otherwise, with his appearance and ability, the number of girls who want to marry him can line up from our village to the town. Ahem. A light cough sounded at the door. Dong Xiaolan looked up and saw that Shao Qingyuan had returned. She quickly stood up. There's still soup stewing in the pot over there. I'll go take a look. With that, she slipped away. Gu Yundong also stood up. They'll go and see how the Liu family's courtyard is cleaned up. She slipped past him and ran away. Shao Qingyuan stood on the spot and thought about her slightly evasive gaze. Was she shy? He lowered his eyes and smiled. In the following days, Gu Yundong was exceptionally busy. The Liu family's courtyard had been tidied up, and all the necessary tools were available. The hired people also began to work. Shao Qingyuan and Qin Hongyi were the ones who went to buy the sugarcane. They had already visited all the nearby villages, so they went further away. The Liu family made black sugar. After that, Gu Yundong brought it back and processed it into white sugar in her courtyard. The 6 members of the Tong family were all helping. Gu Yundong had also raised their monthly allowance. She had told the Tong family in advance that the production of white sugar was an order from the emperor of the capital. If anyone leaked the formula, their entire family would be executed. The Tong family was honest to begin with. When they heard this, they did their best and controlled the process tightly. The sugar production went on in an orderly manner. When it was almost done, Gu Yundong began a plan to open the shop. After checking the calendar, the nearest good day was 2 days before the Laba festival. Gu Yundong took a look. Wasn't this perfect? They could cook labo porridge when they went home after buying sugar. Hence, she set the date to the 6th of December and asked Lu Wei to help promote it. Lu Wei was not afraid of publicity. It did not take long for everyone in his circle to know. Although the price of white sugar was not too ridiculous, it was still expensive to ordinary people. Therefore, the target customers were basically those rich families. On the 6th day of December, Gu Yundong put on her new clothes early in the morning. She got into the carriage and went straight to the county. Chapter 206. The family goes to the county city. Gu Yundong also applied for leave for Gu Yunshu. Father Tong and his wife were the only ones guarding the Tong family. Everyone else went to the county to open for business. Dong Xiaolan also brought the children over. Her husband asked Father Tong to help take care of them for the time being. Gu Yundong's carriage was not big enough. Fortunately, Luan came to pick her up early. He looked much more excited than her. He only turned the carriage around and brought Shao Qingyuan to pick Lu Wei up after sending her to the entrance of the shop. The Gu family shop was in the east of the city. It was called Gus, and the name was given by Shao Qingyuan. When Gu Yundong went to discuss it with him, he almost blurted it out. The street in the east of the city was considered the most prosperous and lively commercial street in Fengkai County. There were pharmaceutical shops, butcher shops, grocery stores, satin cellars, and restaurants everywhere. In the middle, it was originally the Tao family's wine shop. Some time ago, it suddenly closed and was renovated. The surrounding shops did not know what it looked like. Gu Yundong had personally designed the interior of Gus. There was a long wooden board hanging on the right side of the door. On it was written the goods for sale. The first line was white sugar, followed by brown sugar, orange sugar, and pear sugar. There were not many types. At the moment, Gu Yundong could only buy these few things. He would take his time. After entering, there was a round table that could be rotated. The table was tied with clean straw, a few candied haws, and lollipops. Next to it was a counter. This counter was different from other shops. It was beige in color and had a round arc. It was carved with patterns and looked much brighter. There were all kinds of cabinets around the shop. There was a wooden sign hanging on each of them, indicating the name and price. She even divided the first-grade white sugar and the second-grade white sugar. After all, the Tong family had just started making them. There would always be some faulty products when they were not familiar with them. Actually, it did not affect them much. It was just that they were not that white. This kind could be sold at a lower price. The backyard of the shop had also been tidied up. Yundong and the others had arrived early, and the shop wouldn't be open until a particular time. So they went to the backyard together. Dong Xiulan said enviously, "Yundong is so capable. She even has such a big house and shop in the county. You'll have it sooner or later." Yundong poured a glass of water. The last time Uncle Zhong came back from the county, didn't the doctor say that he would slowly recover after recuperating for a while? By then, Aunt's life will be better. Besides, Zhuangzi, Zhongyu, and Zhonglu are so sensible. Your good days will come later. Some time ago, Shao Qingyuan took Uncle Zhong to the best medical center in the county to see a doctor. Perhaps because he had eaten well recently and was in a good mood, Zhong Hu's condition was very optimistic. Now that Dong Xiulan was working in the workshop and the 3 children had helped a lot, and Yundong would pay her, the Zhong family was indeed prospering. Dong's Xiaolan smile widened. She was very grateful to Yundong. If not for her, their family might have really declined. She was a woman with 3 children and had to take care of her man. Not only was she tired, but her man was also very depressed during that period of time. He almost gave up on himself and felt that he was a burden to them. Shao Qingyuan happened to be in the prefectural city at that time. He didn't know the situation even if he wanted to help. Now, everything would really be fine. Just as they were talking, the sound of banging came from outside the door. The people in the courtyard were stunned and ran out. Chapter 207. Opening Dai. As soon as the door opened, she saw a huge lion head rushing towards her. Yundong immediately took a step back and subconsciously wanted to raise her leg to kick it. The lion head began to turn to the side again, and the lion tail jumped around. This one was not enough. Soon, another lion also jumped up. The second lion was obviously more professional than the first. The corners of Yundong's mouth twitched. She swore that she had never thought of calling the dragon and lion dancers over. It turned out that the banging was their gongs and drums. Just as she was thinking about it, the first lion's head was removed, revealing Lu Wei's somewhat silly face. How is it? This opening is lively, right? It attracted everyone. He wiped the sweat off his face and suddenly shouted at the lion behind him, "Shao Qingyuan, come here." The lion behind also removed its head. Shao Qingyuan glared at Lu Wei with a cold expression. Yundong was originally speechless, but when she saw Shao Qingyuan's attire, she could not help but laugh. "I was wondering why you left with Luan. So you prepared such a surprise. Ha! This suits you very well. Really, you're especially handsome. You were even better than Lu Wei in Lion Dance just now." Shao Qingyuan was originally unhappy. He was completely forced to come by Lu Wei. But now, seeing her smile so brightly, he suddenly felt that it was just a lion dance. It was not a big deal. However, Lu Wei was a little dissatisfied. What did she mean by better than him? He had specially trained for a day. No, half a day. He should be better than Shao Qingyuan, who had been pulled over at the last minute. However, before he could retort, a commotion suddenly sounded from behind. "Manager Gu, congratulations on opening the business." Tao Feng was the one who spoke. He led his servants over and even brought gifts. Yundong did not know him, but Lu Wei snorted coldly. However, he did not say anything and only told her in a low voice, "This is Tao Xing's elder brother, Tao Feng. However, the two of them do not have the same mother. He has no feud with me." Yundong was enlightened. Since the visitor was a guest, Yundong naturally welcomed him. "Young Master Tao, you're too kind. Please come in." Then, she asked the second son of the Tong family to serve tea. As soon as he entered, many more people came one after another. They were all young masters who had participated in the bet in Jinxiu restaurant that day. Yundong only recognized the young master of the county magistrate's family. The others were unfamiliar, but she welcomed them indirectly. There were a lot of people. Although the shop was big, there were very few tables and chairs. Yundong could only ask Shao Qingyuan to borrow stools next door. Unexpectedly, when she turned around, she found Shao Qingyuan looking at Tao phone. She pursed her lips slightly and recalled that last time at Jinxiu restaurant, he had also stared at the Tao family for a long time. Yundong did not understand. Did Shao Qingyuan have any conflict with the Tao family? It didn't look like it. If there was, the Tao family wouldn't be so calm when they saw Shao Qingyuan, right? Just as she was thinking about it, Peng Zhongfei came over. Not only did he come, but he also brought his wife in. However, the expression on his face was a little impatient. It was obvious that he did not want to bring his wife. However, in the next moment, when he looked up and saw Yundong, his expression instantly became bright. There was even a hint of flattery in his smile. Seeing this, Madame Peng's face suddenly darkened. She tightened her grip on the handkerchief in her hands and secretly tore it. Yundong was speechless. Was he trying to attract haters for her? Chapter 208. Madame Yao misses. Peng's surname was Yao. The nanny beside her was Nanny Qian, who had come to deliver the congratulatory gift when the Gu family set up the beam. Nanny Qian smiled and introduced, "Miss Gu, this is my young madam." Yundong nodded at Madame Yao. Madame Yao was sizing her up, but she had a smile on her face and looked very friendly. "Miss Gu, congratulations. I heard that your sugar is unique in Fengkai County. My master saw it last time at Jinxiu restaurant. When he came back, he praised it so much that I was curious and couldn't wait to see it. Look, I shamelessly follow my master here. Don't take it to heart." Yundong also laughed. "Madame Peng, you must be joking. It's not that exaggerated. Let's go to the backyard and drink a cup of white sugar water. It tastes good." "Okay." Madame Yao asked Nanny Qian to deliver the gift and nodded with a smile. Peng Zhongfei was not the only one who brought his wife here today. Yundong had asked Dong Xilan to invite the others to the backyard for tea. Since Madame Yao was here, Yundong naturally led her to the back. Dong Xilan was a countryside woman. How could she have interacted with the wives of these wealthy families? She had always been worried. Fortunately, she had the wife of the eldest son of the Tong family, Madame Zhong. Madame Zhong had been a servant in a rich family before. Although she could not serve her master directly, she knew the rules of these families. Seeing that Dong Xilan was uncomfortable, she whispered that she would serve tea and entertain her. Most of these madams knew each other and would find someone to chat with. Dong Xilan nodded repeatedly. She didn't want to be in the middle of these people. However, she had promised to help Yundong today, so she was afraid that she would mess it up. When Yundong led Madame Yao in, she saw Dong Xilan sweating profusely and trembling with fear as she held the candied water. She immediately held her forehead. It was her fault for not thinking it through. It was embarrassing. Fortunately, Qin Zhong and his wife had arrived. Madame Ge had a good relationship with Yundong and was Yenshu's master's wife. At this moment, she was naturally pulled over to help greet Madame Yao and the others. Yundong chatted with her for a while before leaving. It was very lively outside. With Lu Wei and Shao Qingyuan around, there was actually not much of a problem. Many people were looking at the white sugar, and some were asking about the lollipop that was inserted in the middle of straw and emitted the fragrance of fruit. Many shopkeepers next door saw so many rich young masters and young madams coming to support the new shop, so they came over to look curiously. After knowing what was sold in the shop, all of them widened their eyes and were eager to give it a try. However, when they heard the price, they were still a little afraid. This candy was good, but 100 copper coins per tael was really unbearable. However, Yundong was not worried about the customers at all. After the opening, her sugar would be sold like crazy. "I want 50 pounds. I want 100 pounds. I don't want much. 20 caddies is enough." Yundong looked at the people who rushed to the counter with silver in their hands and asked their servants to block the counter with white sugar, as if they were afraid that the sugar would be snatched away. Yundong coughed lightly. "It's my humble shop's honor to have all of you here today. However, there's a limited number of goods, so each customer can only buy 5 caddies at most." "They'll pay more," someone said. Yundong shook her head. "Only 5 caddies." In such a short period of time, the amount of white sugar she could produce was limited. How could she sell dozens of caddies? Everyone was extremely disappointed. In the end, they could only carry a small cloth bag out. Peng Zhongfei also bought 5 caddies, but he left after throwing down 20 taels of silver. Madame Yao saw his actions clearly, and her eyes could not help but darken. Chapter 209. Call Gu Xian'er over. Peng Zhongfei happily got into the carriage with 5 caddies of white sugar. He didn't even care about Madame Yao's expression. Nanny Qian carefully helped her into the car and advised in a low voice, "Young madam, don't think too much. Young master might just like this white sugar. He'll naturally be happy if he can buy it." Madame Yao snorted and closed her eyes to rest after getting into the carriage. She thought of Gu Yundong, a woman who was full of vitality, capable, and beautiful. However, she was a master's type. She hadn't fully matured yet, and master liked someone like Concubine Xia. Yes, she was not master's type. Madame Yao thought about it and heaved a sigh of relief. Peng Zhongfei's voice sounded in her ear. "This candy is too little. They'll ask the Gu family's girl later if she can give us more." No matter what, they had a little friendship, right? "She looks better than last time." Madame Yao suddenly opened her eyes. "Master, do you think Miss Gu is quite good-looking?" "Yes," Peng Zhongfei said without looking up. He had only seen her 3 times. The first time, she was a country girl who was dressed in rustic clothes and had a shriveled body. The second time, in Jinxia restaurant, her expression was much better. She looked energetic, but she looked petty in front of a large group of glamorous young masters. However, looking at her today, if one did not look at her young face, she would look like the wife of a rich family, except for her figure, which was still unattractive. Indeed, it must be because someone was secretly protecting her. Otherwise, how could she have achieved so much in such a short period of time? Madame Yao narrowed her eyes slightly. Nanny Qian, who was beside her, quickly tugged at her. "How did you know Manager Gu?" Madame Yao secretly took a deep breath and asked softly. "Her family." Peng Zhongfei suddenly stopped talking. He couldn't say it. That matter couldn't be leaked. He finally raised his head and glanced at Madame Yao. "Why are you asking this?" "I'm just curious. Shopkeeper Gu doesn't look very old. I heard that she just came here as a refugee. Why does it seem like Master is very familiar with her? Last time, you even asked me to prepare a gift for her house completion celebration. I was just thinking that now that Shopkeeper Gu has opened a shop in the county city, there will be more opportunities to visit her in the future." Peng Zhongfei waved his hand. "Indeed. In the future, take care of her business more and take care of her more. I gave them more money today. They should be happy, right?" He was referring to the non-existent old man, but it sounded to Madame Yao that Peng Zhongfei was trying to please Gu Yundong. Madame Yao could only laugh dryly and could not continue the conversation. Master did not intend to talk about how he and Gu Yundong met. It seemed that there was more to this than met the eye. Nanny Qian lowered her head at the side and became even more frightened when she heard young Master's words. When they arrived at the Peng residence, Peng Zhongfei carried the bag of white sugar and left. Nanny Qian trembled as she helped Madame Yao back to the Rui garden. As soon as they entered the house, Madame Yao sneered. "You're really capable." Nanny Qian knew who she was talking about. She lowered her head slightly and said, "Young madam, perhaps that's not what young master meant. That girl can't meet young master's requirements at all. Doesn't that mean that she's capable?" After Madame Yao walked around the house twice, she suddenly said to Nanny Qian, "Go and call that Gu Xian'er over." "Yes." Nanny Qian quickly replied and left. Chapter 210. Don't like that. Ever since Gu Xian'er returned from the Gu family, she had been promoted as a second-class maid. She guessed that it was probably because Nanny Qian had told her about her relationship with Gu Yundong that young madam had such intentions. Perhaps she wanted her to help do something. However, young madam did not see her much after that. This made Gu Xian'er feel a little conflicted. Fortunately, as a second-class maid, her work became much easier. Her monthly salary was also raised, and she even had the time to dress up. She even understood a lot of things in the Peng residence. For example, young madam was a jealous and scheming person, and Concubine Xia was favored. Young master liked women with curves. Be it concubines or servant girls, they were all this type. Unexpectedly, Nanny Qian came over today to say that young madam was looking for her. Xian'er tidied her clothes and hair before following Nanny Qian to the Rui garden obediently. There was no one else in Madame Yao's house other than her. When she saw Xian'er, she looked up slightly. "Have a seat." Xian'er was flattered and carefully sat down on a chair at the side. A trace of disdain flashed across Madame Yao's eyes. She took a sip of tea and asked, "I heard that you and that girl called Yundong are cousins?" "Yes, young madam. Yundong is indeed my cousin. It's just that," she hesitated, "she doesn't have a good relationship with me." "Then how well do you know her? Do you think the young master will like her?" Xian'er was stunned. For some reason, she felt excited. However, she still looked like she was thinking carefully. After a moment, she said uncertainly, "I don't think so. Young madam, my cousin used to be very weak. I don't know what happened on her way to escape. She has changed a lot." "Oh, what's changed?" "It's just that she's bold. In the past, she cried at the drop of a hat and didn't like to go out. But that day, when I saw her in Yongfu village, I felt that she wasn't messy at all. She talked to people in a very organized way and didn't look like a country girl at all. I don't know if someone taught her." She frowned in thought and answered as if she was not scheming at all. However, Madame Yao narrowed her eyes slightly. "Did someone teach her? Then why do you think that young master won't like her?" Xian'er touched her head and said softly, "I just think that she looks average. Be it her temperament or appearance, she's far inferior to madam. Young master would never like her. Moreover, if young master really likes her, why didn't he just take her as a concubine instead of letting her hang out with other men in that countryside?" "Is that so?" "Yes. So young madam doesn't need to care about her at all." Madame Yao chuckled softly and rubbed the lid of the cup with her fingers. "But why do I feel that master seems to think highly of her?" "Well," Xian'er thought for a moment and said, "Perhaps something happened between the two of them? Perhaps my cousin helped young master before. That's why young master looks at her differently. It might not be a romantic relationship. Otherwise, my cousin, who has been working so hard with her silly mother and young siblings, would have hurried into the manor to enjoy life after meeting someone like young master, right?" Madame Yao nodded. "What you said makes sense. Actually, it's very simple if you want to know what's going on between the two of them," Xian'er said softly. "Tell me." Chapter 211. How much did you earn? Xian'er said, "Young madam, you can invite my cousin to the residence and ask her personally." "Will she answer honestly?" "Young madam, you're extremely smart. Regardless of whether she answers honestly or not, you will definitely get an answer." Madame Yao took a sip of tea and looked at Xian'er with a faint smile. After a while, she nodded. "That makes sense. All right, I understand. You can leave." "Yes, I'll take my leave." Xian'er went down. When she walked out of the Rui garden, she couldn't control the excitement on her face. "Yundong. Oh, Yundong, this is the price you have to pay for not helping me." As soon as she left, Nanny Qian approached Madame Yao and whispered, "Young madam, this Xian'er simply wants to use you to deal with that girl from the Gu family." After learning a few idioms, she actually tried to flatter her master. "Of course I know. She thinks she's so smart, but she only knows how to play tricks. She's just a clown." Madame Yao sneered and looked down on Xian'er. "However, I do want to invite Shopkeeper Gu to the residence as a guest." "Young madam." Madame Yao waved her hand. "Xian'er is right. No matter what relationship Shopkeeper Gu has with master, I will see something. Besides, I'll only invite her over as a guest and chat with her. As for the rest, isn't Xian'er around? Let them fight." Nanny Qian beamed. "Young madam is still the smartest. All right, it's the Laba festival in 2 days. Send the Laba porridge to the Gu family and invite her over as a guest." "Yes." Yundong did not know that she had been targeted again. After opening the shop for a day, the white sugar was snatched up in the morning. The other sweets were almost gone. It was only halfway through the afternoon when she closed the door. At noon, Dong Xiulan brought the 3 children back to Yongfu village with Luan. She was thinking about the work at the workshop. Although Yundong said that he would still give her a salary for the entire day, Dong Xiulan felt that she could not help with the shop in the afternoon. It was not good to take the salary for the entire day, so she insisted on going back to work. She went back, But Lu Wei didn't leave. Seeing that the shop was closed, he hurriedly came over. Quick, take a look at how much money we earned today. Yundong glanced at him. You're an outsider. Why should I count the money in front of you? Lu Wei was speechless. Friendship over, friendship over. He turned around angrily and left. After taking 2 steps, he came back unwillingly. He glared and said, Even if you didn't say it, I could have deduced it. How many caddies of sugar did she sell today, and how many candies did she sell? Did she think he was blind? Yundong gave him a thumbs up. Not bad. I thought you were just bragging to others. Turns out you know what you're doing. Lu Wei raised his eyebrows. After all, I'm a young master of the Lu family. All right, hurry up and count. In fact, Yundong already had an idea. After all, the price of white sugar was set there. In addition, almost everyone had 5 caddies today. She even saw some people buy another 5 caddies after buying 5 caddies. There were also many people who bought second-rate sweets. The shopkeepers next door thought that white sugar was too expensive. In addition, those rich young masters had it, so they simply bought second-rate sweets to try. Yundong took out the money box and saw that it was filled with banknotes and silver pieces. She slowly took a deep breath. Chapter 2:12. Looking for the shopkeeper, 900 taels. There was actually 900 taels of silver. This white sugar was too profitable. Lu Wei swallowed his saliva. In fact, he had only estimated 500 taels in his heart at the beginning. He had calculated wrongly. Woo. However, this 900 taels of silver had to deduct the cost to be what she had earned today. Still, the cost was not high at all. Yundong also secretly took a deep breath. Her eyes lit up. She was finally a millionaire. If she continued to work hard, she would become a billionaire. With money, Yundong became much more generous. She gave 2 taels to everyone present. It's been hard on everyone today. Shao Qingyuan didn't even look at it and directly put away the silver. The 4 members of the Tong family held the silver and beamed with joy. Madame Yang thought for a moment and took a bite. Realizing that it was real, she handed it to Yundong very preciously. Keep it. It won't be lost. Yundong took it. All right. Let me know what you want to buy later. Yunshu stared at the silver in his hand. It was 2 taels. This was 2 taels, a whole 2 taels of silver. The little guy chuckled and put the silver into a small bag in his bag. Yes, he would save it for now. In the future, if his family needed it urgently, he would hand it to his eldest sister. Yunka tilted her head and stared at the silver. She did not know much about 2 taels of silver and did not even know what to buy. She gave it to Yundong. They'll give it to eldest sister. Lu Wei held the silver like a fool. He clearly had more than 1,000 taels of silver with him, but it was not as precious as these 2 taels of silver. He always felt that this was earned through his own hard work. The meaning was different. He put the silver aside and looked at Yundong with sparkling eyes. Girl, how about I be your shopkeeper? In the future, give me 2 taels of silver a day. Every day? That was 60 taels of silver a month. Which shopkeeper would be so expensive? He was robbing money. Yundong smiled insincerely and said, No, you're the eldest young master of the Lu family. You have millions of assets waiting for you to inherit. How can I trouble you with just 2 taels of silver? It's too much of a waste of your talent. It's all right. I don't mind the small amount of money. Anyway, I don't rely on that bit of salary to live. Lu Wei waved his hand, looking very nonchalant. Shao Qingyuan glanced at him. We despise you. Yundong nodded vigorously. Indeed, someone who spoke the truth needed to wake up this wastrel. Lu Wei almost spat out a mouthful of blood. What? Your price is too high. We can't afford it. How is it high? Look at how much money you earn in a day. 2 taels of silver is not even a fraction. Forget it. 1 tael is fine. Shao Qingyuan ignored him. He turned to Yundong and said, But the shop is indeed short of a shopkeeper and clerks. We can't let you look after the shop every day. Unfortunately, my father isn't around. Dajiang had once been an accountant in a restaurant and had some experience. He was actually the most suitable candidate. Lu Wei stomped his feet at the side. I already said that'll be the shopkeeper. Shao Qingyuan thought for a moment and said, I have a suitable candidate. Yundong's eyes lit up. Who? Me? Lu Wei shouted. You'll regret it if you don't invite me. I have a lot of connections in this county. Shao Qingyuan and Yundong looked at each other and gave the Tong brothers a look at the same time. The two of them quickly dragged Lu Wei away. Chapter 213. Deal only then did the two of them calm down. Shao Qingyuan said, I used to work for an escort agency in town. He had no land in Yongfu village. Other than hunting in the mountains, he went to the county city or prefectural city to do short-term work. That escort agency was not big, and the escorts were only short distance. Most of them were between the prefectural city and the county city. The furthest was between the two neighboring prefectural cities. Shao Qingyuan was quite skilled. The head of the escort company really wanted him to stay in the escort company, but he didn't agree. However, he had also helped with 2 short-range escorts, and everyone in the escort company knew him. Chief Escort has an elder brother. He used to be the shopkeeper of a large family in the prefectural city. Later on, that old master passed away. His 2 sons fought to the death. In the end, not only did the family collapse, but that shop was also sold. Uncle Zhong returned to the county city. He has nothing to do now. Yundong lowered her eyes and thought for a while. Is this person reliable? Reliable, he replied without hesitation. Yundong nodded. All right, if you say he's reliable, then he's reliable. Then it's him. Shao Qingyuan saw that she trusted him without hesitation, and his heart suddenly swelled. He secretly took a deep breath. We'll go find him now. Okay. It was still early, and the escort agency was not far from here. Shao Qingyuan returned not long after he left. Uncle Zhong was not very old. He looked to be in his 40s and looked very energetic. His family ran an escort agency, and it seemed that he had also practiced martial arts. This was even better. She wasn't afraid of people causing trouble. Zhang Gang had been a shopkeeper for more than 10 years and was a steady person. When he saw that his boss was a little girl in her teens, he was only surprised for a moment. He had not looked down on her. Instead, he said with admiration, Qingyuan told me about it on the way. I really didn't expect such a rare thing to exist in this world. My boss is really capable. He paused for a moment and said, but you might not know that I used to be a shopkeeper in a cloth shop. The things I sold were different, and I might not be able to meet your requirements. If you're worried, you can let me try to be a shopkeeper for half a month first. If you're not satisfied, feel free to change me. Yundong raised her eyebrows. He knew about the probation period. It won't take half a month. 3 days will be enough. As the saying goes, 1 round is all it takes. Uncle Zhong used to be the shopkeeper of the cloth shop. In 3 days, you will definitely be proficient in being the shopkeeper of Gus. I will come to Gus for the next 3 days. If there's anything you need to know about the shop, you could just ask me. Zhang Gang smiled. The boss thinks highly of me. Zhang Gang, will definitely not let you down. As for the monthly salary, it's temporarily set at 5 taels of silver. If you do it well, I will increase it. She had some understanding. The prices and wages in the county city were not comparable to the prefectural city. Most of the shopkeepers here only had 3 to 4 taels of silver a month. Of course, a big restaurant like the Liu family's was different. However, if she did well, she would not treat the shopkeeper badly. Zheng Gang immediately nodded. All right, when he was a shopkeeper in the prefectural city, he only earned 5 taels a month. He had worked for many years before raising it by 2 taels. After agreeing on the time for work the next day, Zheng Gang went back. Now that the shopkeeper had been confirmed, she still needed a waiter. This waiter did not necessarily need to be experienced. With Zheng Gang leading him, it was not a big problem to help move the goods in the shop and entertain the customers. The most important thing was to be clever. At the mention of cleverness, a person flashed across Yundong's mind. Chapter 214. Zhuangzi Yundong's mouth twitched at the thought of this person. However, after thinking about it, she still felt that he was the most suitable. Therefore, after returning to the village at night, she went straight to the Shao family. When the parents of the Shao family saw her coming, they were stunned for a moment, thinking that she was looking for them for the matter in the field. Unexpectedly, Yundong was looking for Zhuangzi. Zhuangzi had never been at home, especially recently. He often left after eating in the morning with a few steam buns and only returned when it was dark. Xian'er asked a few times, but he couldn't get anything out of him, so he let him be. In any case, ever since he stopped hanging out with Liang, there had been no rumors of him sneaking around. The corners of Yundong's mouth twitched. She could roughly guess where Zhuangzi had gone. However, before she could look for him, Xian'er said, "I know where my brother is. He'll go look for him." With that, Xian'er ran off. Yundong could only continue to wait at the Shi residence. Sure enough, not long after, Zhuangzi ran back while panting. "Miss Gu, why are you looking for me?" He had been working hard recently. Although Yundong had not told him to keep an eye on Zhao Dafa, he felt that Madame Fong and Zhao Dafa must have something going on. He wanted to find out about their affair, no matter what. Therefore, other than spying on Madame Fong and her daughter, he also had to visit Zhao Dafa from time to time. He was so busy that he didn't even have time to eat. But damn it, the two of them had only met once. He didn't know if it was because they had fallen out last time, but there had been no movement since then. Zhuangzi was very worried. If he had known, he would have called the entire village over the last time he saw them alone. He had missed an opportunity. Recently, he had been wondering if he should matchmake them and make them reconcile. Only then could he catch them in the act. Yundong had no idea what he was thinking. She only felt that Zhuangzi seemed to have lost some weight and looked more haggard. It seemed that he was indeed very professional and did his best to do what she instructed him to do. She was relieved. Yundong coughed lightly. "It's like this, Zhuangzi. I open a shop in the county city, and I want to find a smart shop assistant. Are you willing to go?" "What?" Not only Zhuangzi, but the other 3 members of the Shi family widened their eyes. Especially Xian'er and his wife. Their faces were filled with disbelief. They had never thought that their son, who was always away from home and hated by the entire village, would one day be personally invited to be a shop assistant. Zhuangzi was also stunned. He blinked and wondered if he had heard wrongly. "I've been invited to work as a shop assistant? How could a rotten person like him, who couldn't even be a short-term worker when he went to town, become a shop assistant?" For some reason, he felt like crying. Zhuangzi turned around abruptly and wiped his face forcefully with his sleeve. Yundong laughed. "What's wrong? Are you unwilling?" "Yes, of course." Zhuangzi immediately turned around. His eyes were still a little red, but he hurriedly nodded. The Shi couple and Xian'er nodded vigorously. "He's willing. Well, the salary is 1 tael a month for the time being. If you do well, we will increase it. If you agree, you can follow me to the county tomorrow. There's a courtyard there that you can stay in. You can come back if you want. If it's too late and you're too tired, you can stay in the shop." Zhuangzi nodded vigorously. 1 tael of silver. He had heard that the shop assistants in the workshop only earned 500 copper coins. Actually, he also wanted to go to the workshop, but Yundong wanted honest and reliable people. He admitted that he was not. Besides, he still had to keep an eye on Madame Fong and Zhao Dafa. At the thought of this, Zhuangzi suddenly reacted. Then Madame Fong. Chapter 215. 2 people he was most afraid of. Yundong interrupted him. "No need. You can come early tomorrow." He had been watching Madame Fong and her daughter for almost a month. Other than asking Zhao Dafa to steal from her house, there was nothing else. Now that her house was guarded by the Tong family, she was not afraid that Madame Fong would find someone to sneak into their house. Besides, there was no reason to guard against thieves for 1,000 days. Her initial thought was to keep an eye on them for a month. Zhuangzi immediately agreed. After Yundong left, he reached out and slapped himself hard. Then he asked his parents, "Am I dreaming?" "It's not a dream. You can really become a worker in the county city." Xian'er's honest face was filled with excitement. He patted his shoulder heavily with his rough palm. He also nodded repeatedly. Her son was finally promising. 1 tael of silver a month. "Your father and I also have a salary every month now. Now that you have something serious to do, you can get married soon." In the past, her poor son did not have a good reputation. He idled around all day, and the matchmakers would take a detour when they saw him. Now, she could even imagine the scene of her hugging her grandson in the near future. Zhuangzi took a deep breath and looked at his parents. He suddenly realized that they were different from before. That's right. Ever since they helped the Gu family manage the orchard, the two of them had been in high spirits and full of energy. Now that he had work to do, their lives would get better in the future. In the end, he looked at Lan Hua'er and saw that her face was red and excited. He immediately smiled. Wait for me to save up your dowry. The next day, Zhuangzi changed into his best set of clothes and waited at the entrance of the Gu residence before dawn. When Gu Yundong went out, she was almost shocked by the figure in the corner. She thought that Madame Fong had found someone to spy on her as soon as she asked Zhuangzi to come back. When she saw who it was, she wanted to kick him out. Zhuangzi chuckled. Miss Gu. No, boss, do we have to leave? Gu Yundong asked Gu Yunshu, who was also going to school, to get into the carriage before sizing him up. Then she frowned slightly. Although Zhuangzi was wearing the best clothes, there were still 2 patches on the corner of his shirt. This wouldn't do. The shop assistant was the face of the shop. If he wore patched clothes, others would think that she was abusing her employees and it would affect her reputation. It seemed that she had to think about the work clothes. She asked Zhuangzi to get into the carriage too. The latter shook his head and sat beside Father Tong. He'll sit outside with the old man. Gu Yundong did not try to persuade him anymore. Then, Zhuangzi watched as Shao Qingyuan came out of the Shao family's house. When he saw him sitting on the shaft of the carriage, the guy naturally entered the carriage. Zhuangzi's eyes widened and he shuddered violently. No, he couldn't be afraid. What was there to be afraid of? He hadn't offended Shao Qingyuan, right? I heard that the workshop is half Shao Qingyuan's, so he also has a share in this shop. Does that mean he's my boss too? The 2 people he was most afraid of were actually his bosses. How did he end up in such a situation? Why did he take things so hard? The carriage entered the county city. Gu Yundong first sent her brother to school, then went to the clothing store and asked Zhuangzi to choose suitable clothes. Zhuangzi was extremely excited. Gift? I can choose anything? Shao Qingyuan's cold gaze shot at him. Zhuangzi suddenly shivered and felt a chill on his neck, as if he would be separated from his head at any time. He moved to the side weakly. Chapter 2:16. Uninvited guest. Gu Yundong glared at him. Dream on. Do you want to choose silk? Just choose something that looks clean, neat, warm, and without patches. Zhuangzi nodded, but he was still very happy. At least he had new clothes to wear. Seeing that he had gone to choose, Gu Yundong said to Shao Qingyuan, help shopkeeper Zhong choose a set too. Since Zhuangzi has been given work clothes, it doesn't make sense that the shopkeeper doesn't have them. See which one is suitable. Work clothes. Shao Qingyuan's expression softened. Yes. Gu Yundong pointed at Zhuangzi. We can't let him wear those clothes to entertain the guests, right? Treat it as a benefit in our shop. Our shop? Shao Qingyuan's expression brightened. All right, he'll choose. The clothes given to the shopkeeper were definitely different from the shop assistants. Shao Qingyuan estimated Zhong Gang's figure and quickly chose a set for him. Zhuangzi returned very quickly. He was still a little apprehensive, but seeing that Gu Yundong had no objections and readily paid, he became happy again. When they arrived at the shop, Zhong Gang was already waiting there. Gu Yundong asked him to take Zhuangzi to tidy up the counter while she went to the backyard and opened one of the rooms. After a while, she let them in to move the inventory here. Actually, there was no stock at all. She had just taken it out of her spatial storage. There was no one guarding the shop. How could she dare to leave it here? In the future, she planned to send someone to deliver it every day, so her family might need to buy a mule cart. After arranging the goods, Gu Yundong opened the door. The guests outside the door had arrived early. How could 5 caddies of white sugar be enough yesterday? This morning, they had sent the servants to buy it. Even some of the owners in the surrounding shops wanted it. After all, Zhong Gang had many years of work experience. At first, he was not used to it, but after a while, he was at ease and quickly got to work. Zhuangzi was inexperienced, but he was indeed quite smart and full of energy. He worked very hard in his studies and welcomed people with a smile the entire day. Although the smile at the beginning made Yundong feel that it was very wretched. In addition, with Shao Qingyuan holding the fort, the order was still very stable today. Yundong knew that there would definitely be a lot of customers for white sugar during the first 3 days. Some people would repeatedly buy a few more kilograms, or give them away, or sell them in the prefectural city. Yundong could not care less. The amount she produced was limited, and it was only a small matter. The imperial court was the main force, and they did not care about her small amount of candy. Chapter 217. Finally, here it was Nanny Qian. She carried a basket with a smile. "This is labo porridge. Young madam asked me to send it over. Miss Gu has just arrived in Fengkai County. You can try our local labo porridge and see if it's any different from yours." Yundong was a little surprised. Why did Madame Yao send her labo porridge? However, Nanny Qian quickly resolved her doubts. Young Madam said that she came to Gus with young Master to celebrate Miss Gus' opening a few days ago. She hit off with Miss at first sight. Unfortunately, there were many guests that day and business was booming. Miss was busy, so our young Madam didn't have the chance to talk to Mississippi. As Nanny Qian spoke, she took out an invitation. Seeing that Miss' shop has stabilized over the past few days, young Madam wants to invite Miss into the residence as a guest. Coincidentally, there's a plum garden in the Peng residence. At this time of the year, the plum blossoms are blooming. Young Madam sent me over to send Miss an invitation. Please don't decline. Yundong asked. Guest? Invite her to the Peng residence to admire the plum blossoms? No. She didn't have any romantic cells in her. She was a vulgar person who only wanted to earn money every day and didn't have time to admire the flowers. She had no intention of interacting with Madame Yao. Yundong wanted to refuse, but Nanny Qian seemed to have seen through her intentions and added, Miss Gus' cousin, Xian'er, also misses you quite a lot. It's just that it's not convenient for her to come out at well now. Miss Gu, you can go and visit her and catch up with her. Yundong swallowed his words. She knew it. She hated it when these rich families beat around the bush. Couldn't you just use Xian'er's name to look for her? Yundong accepted the labo porridge and invitation. Your young madam is so sincere in inviting me. He'll definitely go. Thank you. Nanny Qian's mission was completed, and her smile became more sincere. Then I'll go back first. Miss, no need to see me off. Yundong smiled. Seeing that she had left, Zhuangzi came over. Boss, our shop is too popular. Even the Peng family has sent you labo porridge. He had truly felt the business of the past 2 days. If not for the purchase quota, their sugar might have been sold out the moment the shop opened. Yundong held the invitation card in her hand and handed the labo porridge to Zhuangzi. Just nice, you can share this labo porridge. For us to eat? Yeah. Zhuangzi couldn't wait to open the lid. His eyes lit up. The labo porridge in Peng Manor was indeed different. There were many ingredients such as river rice, white fruit, walnut kernels, chestnuts, red dates, longan, and so on. To Zhuangzi, it was even more sumptuous than the Spring Festival's food. Yundong also glanced at it, then retracted her gaze and went back with the invitation. Zhuangzi immediately went to find bowls and chopsticks to share with Zhong. Yongfu village was very lively. The Laba festival was a day to worship ancestors and gods and pray for a bumper harvest and auspicious luck. Every family had more or less prepared laba porridge. Even if the ingredients were not rich, it had to be done. The workshop was not on holiday, but the laba porridge that Yundong had asked the Tong family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law to cook in the morning was very sweet. She gave everyone in the workshop a big bowl to bring back. Everyone in the workshop looked at the full bowl of laba porridge, and their smiles never faded. As expected, working in the Gu family's workshop was simply too good. After eating the porridge, they worked even harder. Yundong had been busy for 2 days and had almost forgotten the date she had agreed on with Madame Yao. Chapter 218. Going to the Peng residence again this morning, Gu Yundong instructed Shao Qingyuan on some matters in his workshop and planned to go straight to the county city. Shao Qingyuan knew about Gu Xian'er's relationship with her and was worried. Gu Yundong laughed. I'm not afraid of her. I'll deal with whatever comes my way. It's fine if she knows her place, but if she really dares to approach me, I can teach her how to behave. With that, she was about to leave with Gu Yunshu. Unexpectedly, this little fellow ran straight to the Zhong family. Not long after, he mysteriously carried a huge bag out and climbed into the carriage. Gu Yundong was surprised. What are you bringing to school? The kid blinked, as if wondering if he should tell her. Gu Yundong sighed. You've grown up and have secrets with eldest sister. Sigh, I'm sad. With a whoosh, Gu Yunshu immediately tore open the bag and pushed in front of her. Gu Yundong's heartbroken expression disappeared in a second. She lowered her head and picked up the school bag on the bag. She looked up at Gu Yunshu. The latter was still surprised by the speed at which his eldest sister's expression changed. He looked conflicted. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4? Are you very short of school bags? Gu Yunshu was taken aback and quickly shook her head. No. These are for the other classmates in my school. As he spoke, he covered his mouth and laughed. On the first day I went to school, the other students liked my school bag very much and asked me who made it and wanted to buy it. I asked Aunt for help. A school bag costs 2 copper coins. They'll give Aunt 90 copper coins, and he'll collect some intermediate fees. I have 40 copper coins now. In the future, when eldest sister doesn't have enough money, he'll give everything to you. Gu Yundong's eyes widened. F***CK. He actually knew how to do business at such a young age. He knew how to collect the intermediate fee and save money for her. How could there be such a sensible child? Gu Yundong rubbed his little head fiercely. Gu Yunshu shook his head and thought that she was angry. He quickly explained, I told the teacher, and he agreed. However, there are very few students in our school. Some students come from poor families, so they did not buy anything. These 4 people are very rich. One don't charge much. They also gave me the fabric themselves. Aunt was very happy. I told Aunt not to tell you. Gu Yundong carried the child over. I'm not angry. I'm very happy with your actions. In the future, when you encounter such things, remember to tell the teacher in advance. Okay? The intermediate fee he charged was not high. Dong Xiaolan could earn 360 copper coins from 4 school bags, which was also a help to her family. When Gu Yunshu heard what she said, he hurriedly nodded. Yes, I told any make it better. They're even sturdier than mine. I also asked my classmates for their opinions. I did everything I could. The 2 of them chatted as the carriage entered the county city. She sent Gu Yunshu to school. When she saw him running away happily with his bag, she turned the carriage around and went to the Peng residence. Nanny Qian was already waiting at the door. When she saw her, she quickly welcomed her. Miss, you're here. Please come in. Young madam has been talking about you since early in the morning and instructed me to wait here. As she spoke, she took a few more glances at her. Seeing that her hands were empty, she could not help but purse her lips. Those who came from the countryside were from the countryside, who would come to visit without any gifts. She led Gu Yundong all the way to the Rui Garden. As expected, Madame Yao was waiting for her at the door, looking expectant and happy. Chapter 219. Madame Yao wants to get information. You're finally here. Come in quickly. Nanny Qian, pour tea for Miss Gu. Madame Yao pulled her hand affectionately and walked inside. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. It was too incongruous to be so enthusiastic. Nanny Qian poured a cup of tea for Gu Yundong. Madame Yao said, There's also white sugar in this tea that Miss Gu bought. It's sweet and suitable for us women to drink. Miss Gu, try it? Then, she shook her head. It's too distant to call you Miss Gu. Can I call you Yundong? You can call me Sister Yao too. How about that? Fine by me. Gu Yundong took a sip of tea. She did not really drink it. Strange people in unfamiliar places were strangely enthusiastic. She would be a fool if she dared to eat her food. The moment she raised her hand to drink the tea, she poured the tea into her space. When she put down the teacup, she nodded slightly. It's quite delicious. Madame Yao smiled and said, There are also pastries and preserved fruits here. Yundong, don't stand on ceremony. As for me, the last time I saw you, I felt that you suited my taste. We're both straightforward people, so we'll definitely be able to talk together. It's also my master's fault. He knew you long ago and didn't think of introducing you to me. He didn't invite you over either. Last time at your house, he asked me to prepare a congratulatory gift. He didn't tell me in detail, causing me to not be able to get to know you sooner. Gu Yundong thought that Peng Zhongfei did not have the guts to speak nonsense. He would probably have nightmares at night. She was also polite. Young Master Peng is busy. Besides, I'm just a village girl. You are the madam of a big family. He was afraid that he'll offend you, right? No, he's very free. Madam Yao had a smile on her face, and he's full of praises for you. How could he be afraid that you would offend me? Praise? Peng Zhongfei must be crazy. Speaking of which, I still don't know how you met my master, Yundong. I asked my master, and he only said that he hadn't known you for long. Tell me, I'm quite curious. I've been married to my master for several years, but this is the first time I've seen him so protective of a little girl. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Very good. This was a very interesting question. How they meet? She thought for a moment and said, Actually, there's nothing special. It's just that I got to know young Master Lu first. One time, they were drinking tea together in the tea house, and I happened to bump into him. Young Master Lu introduced me to him, and we got to know each other. Young Master Peng is protecting me. Perhaps he thinks I'm pitiful? Is that so? Madame Yao lowered her eyes and took a sip of tea. She nodded. Our master is indeed quite close to young Master Lu, but it's rare to drink tea in a tea house. Didn't they always meet in a brothel? Gu Yundong glanced at her slightly tightened fingers from the corner of her eye and sighed secretly. If you don't believe me, don't ask me. She didn't know what Peng Zhongfei said to her, but it seemed that no matter how she responded, it would make her unhappy. Madame Yao said a few more words to her before saying, Yundong, take a seat first and go to change. We'll be back in a while. When the time comes, we'll go to the plum garden to see the plum blossoms. Okay. Gu Yundong watched her leave with a smile. Madame Yao went out, and Nanny Qian followed behind. As soon as the two of them left the Rui garden, Madame Yao's expression changed. She's just a country girl. She's quite pretentious. She even stammered when I asked her questions. It's obvious that she has something on her mind. Madame Yao stood outside the courtyard and glared inside. Chapter 220. Gu Xian'er's plan. Nanny Qian quickly comforted her. Young madam, don't lower yourself to her level. She's unruly and doesn't know anything. I think she's very smug. I said that master was protecting her, and she shamelessly admitted it. Pitiful? Concubine Xiao also said that she was pitiful back then, but in the end, she was brought into the residence by young master. Is she hinting to me that she will enter the residence one day? Nanny Qian nodded repeatedly and echoed. Her thoughts were seen through by young madam at a glance. Madame Yao was furious. In the past, there was a concubine Xiao who would beat around the bush and refuse to speak honestly. In the end, she turned around and complained to her master. This Gu Yundong was the same as concubine Xiao. They were not good people. I asked her how she got to know master. She even deliberately mentioned young Master Lu to suppress me. She's very smug about knowing young Master Lu. The more Madame Yao spoke, the angrier she became. She took 2 deep breaths before calming down. Nanny Qian did not dare to speak. Madame Yao slowly calmed down and asked softly, Young madam, what should we do next? Then where is Gu Xian'er? Over by the plum gardens. Madame Yao narrowed her eyes slightly. Have you found out what Gu Xian'er wants to do? At the mention of this, Nanny Qian could not help but sneer. She's stupid and poisonous. She found the scar-faced servant in the residence who poured the night utensils and wanted that servant to break that Gu girl's body and make the two of them a couple. Nanny Qian had been keeping an eye on Gu Xian'er for the past few days because she wanted to know her plan. She didn't expect that after thinking about it, the girl would come up with such a bad idea. She didn't even think about it. If young master really valued the Gu girl, he would definitely investigate what happened in the residence. The first person to be punished would be Gu Xian'er. Those who came from the countryside were from the countryside. Even after staying in the residence for a few months, they were still like this. Except, young madam, will this matter implicate you? Madame Yao said nonchalantly, I only invited Gu Yundong over as a guest. It was the two sisters who had a conflict. The one who committed the crime will be Gu Xian'er. What has it got to do with me? At most, he'll be reprimanded by master. Would he punish me for a broken girl? With that, Madame Yao returned to the Rui Garden. When she saw Gu Yundong sitting there quietly, she immediately smiled. Sister Yundong, you've waited for a long time. Let's go. The plum garden is over there and not far away. It's a good season for plum blossoms to bloom. The scenery is extremely beautiful. Gu Yundong followed her to the plum garden and indeed saw Gu Xian'er there. Chapter 221. Peng Zhong is here. The four of them had different thoughts and could only walk into the plum garden together. Gu Yundong quite liked this place. The Peng family was indeed rich and imposing. They had actually opened up such a large plum garden. In the future, when she had money, she would also get a plum garden or peach blossom forest. It would definitely be very comfortable. Madame Yao was not in the mood to admire the flowers behind her. From the corner of her eye, she saw Gu Xian'er, who was far behind. She could not help but feel angry. What a useless thing. As she was thinking, she suddenly saw her maid, Zhuangzi, rush over from behind. She did not look too good. Madame Yao stopped in her tracks. Zhuangzi whispered into her ear, Young madam, young master heard that Miss Gu was here and insisted on coming over. We couldn't stop him. Madame Yao's expression suddenly turned ugly. Didn't you say that he left early in the morning? He just came back. Zhuangzi lowered her voice. When Miss Gu came over, she happened to be seen by a servant in young master's courtyard. Young master immediately knew when he returned. He didn't even return to the courtyard and came straight here. Madame Yao glanced at Gu Yundong with a dark expression. Master indeed treated her differently. She secretly took a deep breath, squeezed out a smile, and said to Gu Yundong, Sister Yundong, Master is here. He'll go and say a few words. He'll be back soon. Peng Zhongfei is here. Before Gu Yundong could reply, Madame Yao had already left in a hurry. After a while, the sound of voices could be heard. It was not far away, and one could vaguely hear Peng Zhongfei's raised pitch. Why did it sound like they were about to quarrel? Gu Yundong thought about it and did not go over. She waited quietly for a moment. On the other side, Madame Yao almost quarreled with Peng Zhongfei. As soon as she left the plum garden, she saw her master standing in the pavilion and looking over. She tried her best to suppress the anger in her heart and squeezed out a smile to welcome him. When Peng Zhongfei saw that she was alone, he frowned and asked, Where's the Gu girl? Didn't they say she was here? Madame Yao closed her eyes slightly and reminded herself that her master had always been like this. She was already used to it. Master, don't scare my esteemed guest. Look at how travel-worn you are. You should go back and tidy up first. Sister Yundong will be having lunch here. If you have anything to say, say it later. Peng Zhongfei did not want to wait. He happened to have something urgent to talk to Gu Yundong at the moment and did not have the patience to return to his courtyard. Besides, wasn't he quite neat and clean? Hence, he waved his hand and said to Madame Yao, Since the Gu family's girl is having lunch at home, go tell the kitchen to make some delicious food. Draft the menu yourself. I have something to discuss with the Gu family's girl. Madame Yao could not hold the smile on her face at all. Just as she was about to retort, Nanny Qian suddenly tugged at her. Young madam, young master must have something to discuss with Shopkeeper Gu. Let's get the kitchen to make a few dishes from Shopkeeper Gu's hometown for the guest to try. That's right. Go ahead. Peng Zhongfei waved his hand. Madame Yao received Nanny Qian's signal and could only leave the plum garden with her hand in hers. As soon as she went out, she said unhappily, Why did you ask me to come out? They're left alone. Young madam, isn't this just nice? Let's keep Gu Xian'er here too. We'll find an excuse to lure young master out later so that Gu Xian'er can make a move. In that case, if anything happens to Gu Yundong, young master can't blame you. Madame Yao thought about it and agreed. If something happened to Gu Yundong right under Master's nose, would Master blame her for not entertaining the guest well? Gu Yundong gave him a strange look. The Peng family should know who was taking the bulk of the sugar benefits now, right? How dare he say that? However, Peng Zhongfei was different from what she thought. I heard that your workshop hasn't been built yet. Gu Yundong was about to nod when she saw a figure walking over from the corner of her eye. She looked up and saw Gu Xian'er carrying 2 cups of tea over. Peng Zhongfei also saw it and was instantly dissatisfied. Didn't I tell you all to go down? Gu Xian'er lowered her head obediently. Young madam instructed this servant to serve young master and the esteemed guest well. This servant is just here to serve tea. Peng Zhongfei was a little thirsty, so he nodded. Gu Yundong saw that the colors of the 2 cups of tea were different. She thought for a moment and asked, "What tea is this?" "This is Qihong. Young master's is pure tea." Gu Yundong swapped the 2 cups of tea. "I've never had pure before. Young Master Peng, do you mind exchanging with me?" Chapter 223:1 Advise you to be a human. Peng Zhongfei didn't care at all. "What's wrong with that? You haven't drunk pure before. Coincidentally, I have it at home. They'll get the servants to prepare some for you later. You can take it back and drink it slowly." Gu Yundong thanked him and picked up the cup of pure tea. From the corner of her eye, she saw Gu Xian'er's motionless expression. She changed the tea, but Gu Xian'er was actually indifferent? Could it be that she was wrong, and Gu Xian'er did not tamper with the tea? On the other side, Peng Zhongfei had already picked up Qihong and taken 2 sips. Gu Yundong also covered the tea with her sleeves and poured all the tea into the space. Gu Xian'er was satisfied and left with a smile. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes slightly. Gu Xian'er must have done something, but she did not seem to mind that the 2 of them had changed teacups. Then there was only one possibility. There was something wrong with both cups of tea. With Gu Xian'er's guts, she definitely wouldn't dare to harm Peng Zhongfei. There shouldn't be anything in the tea that would harm his life. Gu Yundong thought about it and felt that there was a 50% chance that she had added something arousing. If that was really the case, Gu Xian'er wanted something to happen between her and Peng Zhongfei. Then, Peng Zhongfei might take her in. Coupled with Madame Yao's personality, she might be jealous and kill her out of jealousy. Gu Yundong was disgusted by Gu Xian'er's actions. However, there was one thing that she could not figure out. Did Madame Yao know about Gu Xian'er's plan? "What are you thinking about?" "I'm talking to you." Peng Zhongfei's irritable voice sounded in her ears. Gu Yundong suddenly came back to her senses. "Oh, are you asking me about the workshop?" "I'm listening." "Our workshop has indeed not been built yet. What do you mean by cooperating with me?" Peng Zhongfei was slightly satisfied. Then, he said mysteriously, "Your workshop hasn't been built yet. It's just nice. I just got a workshop. It's not far from your village. How about I let you use it? But can you sell me more white sugar? I need at least 50 kilograms a day. 5 kilograms is too little." 50 kilograms. When he sold it, he did not know how much money he could earn. The higher-ups meant that they could not get involved in Gu Yundong's sugar business. But this was a normal transaction and was not against the rules. Gu Yundong exclaimed, "A workshop not far from our village? Did you buy it?" "That's right. I bought it. I spent 10 taels of silver and got something for free. I got a workshop, and the owner gave his daughter to me as a concubine." His disdainful expression was very annoying. Gu Yundong could not help but frown. She felt that there was something wrong with his words. Looking at Peng Zhongfei's smug expression and thinking about how he wanted to forcefully occupy her blueprint, a bad feeling surged in her heart. "Don't tell me you bought it forcefully. Not only did you occupy his workshop, but you also want his daughter to be your concubine?" Peng Zhongfei snorted coldly. "It's that family who doesn't know what's good for them. I was polite before resorting to force. I came personally to propose with sincerity and even promised to give them 50 taels of silver. In the end, they actually dared to take out a broom and beat me out. Fine, they refused a toast only to drink a forfeit. Then don't blame me for being ruthless." F***CK. You're actually very proud of yourself for doing such a shameless thing? Indeed, a dog can't change its habit of eating shit. Yundong resisted the urge to beat him to death and planned to persuade him to be human. In the end, a maid ran over and panted, "Young master, Concubine Xia has fainted." Peng Zhongfei was speechless. He silently turned to look at Yundong. "Why is it that every time you come to my house, something happens?" "He is probably telling you not to do evil." Yundong pointed to the top of her head. "God is everywhere." Peng Zhongfei suddenly stood up. "He'll return the workshop and that concubine. Damn it, luckily I haven't touched her yet." Seeing that the maidservant was still standing at the side, he immediately shouted, "What are you waiting for? Get a doctor for the concubine." Without even looking at Peng Zhongfei, who had already pounced on Xian'er, she strode out of the room. "Since it's enjoyment, I'll leave it to you." Didn't Peng Zhongfei lack a concubine? She had to return one to him. You should be grateful to her. She just didn't know how Xian'er would face Madame Yao's anger and Concubine Xia's methods after becoming the Peng family's concubine. Yundong returned to the plum garden and started to pluck the branches excitedly. When she came out with a large bouquet of plum blossoms, Madame Yao still had not returned. She smiled. She really did not understand what Madame Yao was thinking. However, just as she reached the pavilion, a short man in servant clothes with a scar on his face and a wretched smile walked over. Chapter 225. Madame Yao has fainted. Yundong had just frowned when she heard him ask, "You're Miss Gu, right? Are you feeling unwell? Do you feel very hot? Do you need my help?" As he spoke, he approached her. In the next moment, a stench assaulted her face. Yundong was so frightened that she immediately took a step back. "Stop right there. Don't come over. I'm fine. I'm not feeling unwell. I don't need your help." The man frowned. The scar on his face became more distorted because of this action, and he looked a little fierce. Yundong could not figure out where this person came from, but his question was very strange, as if he had guessed what would happen to her. Seeing that the man was coming forward again, Yundong immediately walked out of the plum garden. The man immediately chased after her. Because of the smell on his body, Yundong had no intention of fighting him. She broke into a run. Not far from the plum garden, she happened to see Madame Yao and her servant. However, the two of them were chatting and laughing. Instead of going to the plum garden, they went to the Rui garden. Yundong sneered and rushed in front of Madame Yao. "Young madam, what do you mean? Is this how you entertain guests? It's fine if you left on your own, but your master has also left. I can't even find him in the plum garden. I even met such a strange person. It's fine if he stinks, but his brain isn't clear and his words are incoherent. Young madam, even if you don't like me, you don't have to discuss me like this. Since I'm not welcome here, I'll go back now. I didn't even want to come." Madame Yao was shocked by the person who rushed in front of her. Before she could see clearly, she was shocked by her crackling sound and took a step back. When she finally understood what Yundong meant, Yundong had already flicked her sleeves and left. Madame Yao blinked and looked at her departing back. Then, she looked at the servant with a scar on his face. At this moment, this person had already slipped away. Madame Yao suddenly came back to her senses and quickly pointed at Nanny Qian. "Quick, get her back. They'll chase her now." Nanny Qian was also a little confused and chased after Yundong. Madame Yao paced around for a while before she looked puzzled. "What's going on? Didn't Xian'er have a plan? Why did Yundong run out? Can't that servant even stop a person?" Nanny Qian returned very quickly, with her old arms and legs, and she was already left behind. How could she catch up? When she ran out of the door, she was already gone. The more Madame Yao thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. She felt that something had vaguely exceeded her plan. She could not care less about Yundong and hurriedly said to Nanny Qian, "Let's go to the plum garden to take a look." Nanny Qian was also worried. The two of them went to the plum garden. Before they entered, they saw a few servants surrounding the house not far away and pointing at it. Madame Yao's eyelids twitched as she rushed over. The voice inside was too familiar. Who else could it be other than Peng Zhongfei? Madame Yao almost fainted. Nanny Qian quickly asked the other servants to leave and pushed open the door herself. The room was in a mess. When she saw the people inside, clearly, Madame Yao couldn't breathe and really fainted. Nanny Qian panicked, and the Peng residents instantly fell into chaos. Yundong did not care about them. As soon as she left the Peng residence, she hurriedly got into the carriage and saw an unexpected person sitting inside. "Why are you here?" If she didn't get rid of her, Peng Zhongfei would be in the hands of the two sisters sooner or later. She would be completely thrown into the cold palace. How could she do that? Getting rid of Xian'er became the thing she needed to do the most. Not only did she want to get rid of Xian'er, but she also wanted to take the opportunity to deal with Madame Yao. Hence, Madame Yao lost her child because of Xian'er. Madame Yao hated her to death. However, Peng Zhongfei had only given her a small punishment because of Xian'er and Yundong. Madame Yao was not satisfied. She told Peng Zhongfei that the two of them were like fire and water. That day in the plum garden, Xian'er had wanted to set Yundong up with the servant who poured the urine. In the end, Yundong was fine, and she climbed into young master's bed. When Peng Zhongfei heard this, he was even more convinced that Yundong had been blessed by someone to escape safely. After further investigation, Madame Yao was indeed telling the truth. Peng Zhongfei hated Xian'er to the core and handed her over to Madame Yao to deal with. He originally wanted to punish Madame Yao. He was not a fool and naturally knew that there was something wrong with Madame Yao. However, she had already aborted the child. It was fine if she said a few words, but he completely hated Madame Yao. When Lu Wei said this, he even added with a smile, "Oh, right, Peng Zhongfei also asked me to pass you a message." Chapter 228. New Year's Goods. What? Cough. He said that he was quite sorry that you had encountered such a thing in his residence. Lu Wei coughed lightly and said with a smile, "Strange. Why didn't he come to tell you personally? What else could it be? He must be afraid of her. What if he was unlucky again?" Yundong sighed deeply about the Peng family. "In that case, Concubine Xia has become the biggest winner. Isn't that so?" Lu Wei recalled the whole story and couldn't help but tremble. These women's methods are too terrifying. Fortunately, his father was a good person and there was no such mess in the family. Otherwise, with his innocent personality, he might not live past 3 years old. Shao Qingyuan glanced at him from the corner of his eye. No one knew who he was talking to. "So one wife is enough." Lu Wei nodded in agreement. "Yes, that makes sense. I won't go to brothels in the future." This awareness was quite high. Could he bear to? After knowing about the Peng family, Yundong began to focus on preparing for the new year. 23. Prepare sweet candies. 24. House cleaning day. 25. Fried tofu. 26. Stewed white meat. 27. Kill the rooster. 28. Prepare the flour. 29. Steamed buns. Although Yundong did not strictly prepare these according to the folk songs, she was indeed busy every day. In the afternoon of the 29th, she asked the eldest son of the Tong family to push the cart to the Lu family's courtyard. The villagers in the workshop were very diligent and efficient. They had already received a month's salary. 500 copper coins was not a small sum. When they saw the money, they were even more motivated. When Yundong entered the courtyard, someone immediately saw her. "Boss, why are you here?" "It's the holidays tomorrow, so I have to give you guys New Year's goods so that everyone can have a good New Year." Yundong smiled. Everyone was diligent, and she was happy to distribute the New Year goods. Everyone was stunned. They stopped what they were doing and looked at her in surprise. There's New Year's goods?" "That's right. Why is it so good? We've been paid, and you're still giving out New Year goods?" As he spoke, Father Tong had already pushed the cart in. Seeing that it was filled with many things, everyone present could not help but gasp. It was one thing to give out New Year goods, but why did she give out so many? Everyone became excited and couldn't help but glance at the cart. This was especially true for people from poor families. Although they received a month's salary, their families had many urgent needs. How could they have the ability to buy anything good? They wished they could come to work during the new year and show off their hard work. That way, the Gu family would recruit them again. Gu Yundong walked to a step in the Liu family's courtyard. Unfortunately, she was still growing. Even if she stood on the step, she would only be looked at from above. She could not help but tiptoe a little. After a while, she gave up and said as if nothing had happened, "Everyone has worked hard recently. It's the new year, so it's only right to give out some rewards. Let's be happy together." Everyone immediately beamed with joy. They had just seen that there were many good things on it. They were better than what they had bought themselves. They had also heard about bosses who gave out New Year goods, but the things those people gave were not worth much. What's more, they were short-term workers. After the new year, they would rest for a while. Gu Yundong coughed lightly. "Next, those whose names I call, come forward and receive them one by one. I don't want to miss out on anyone." All right, someone replied. Then, as if he had thought of something, he hurriedly said, I'll go wash my hands. We'll be back soon." The surrounding neighbors were envious. In the past, the Shi family was the poorest family in their area. Unexpectedly, they could not even finish eating meat. However, it was also because of this that everyone in the village knew that working in the Gu family's workshop would earn them extra things for the new year. All of them rubbed their palms together, thinking that they would definitely fight for it the next time the Gu family recruited workers. Qingyuan and the Liu family were also given New Year goods. After the New Year's goods were distributed, the workshop temporarily stopped work and the shop was closed. The next day was New Year's Eve. Gu Yundong prepared everyone's red packets and even went to the county to buy firecrackers and fireworks. She was waiting for them to be lit at night. The entire village was very lively on New Year's Eve. Many people would stay up through the night for the new year. As soon as it was dark, the firecrackers in the village crackled. After this house was finished, there was the next one. There was almost no break in between. Zhuangzi of the Zhong family also brought his younger siblings out to set off firecrackers. He even greeted Gu Yundong when he saw her. The three children's faces were red. In the past, their families were poor. Although they had firecrackers, they could only buy a small batch. This year, they had bought a large bunch of firecrackers. Chapter 230. Brother Shao is too pitiful. After the Zhong family finished setting off the firecrackers, they bade Gu Yundong and HR family good night and closed the door. Gu Yundong was about to set off firecrackers when she suddenly saw the quiet Shao family. Ever since they moved to the new house, Zhong, who had also returned home, Shao Qingyuan was the only one left in the Shao family. She thought about how he was alone. Although he had prepared some New Year goods, there were not much. Shao Qingyuan had helped her by the firecrackers, so Gu Yundong really did not know if he had prepared them for himself. At the side, Gu Yunshu also looked at the Shao family's door. She sighed and said faintly, "Brother Shao is too pitiful." Gu Yundong's heart skipped a beat. She lowered her head and asked Gu Yunshu, "Do you dare to release these firecrackers?" Gu Yunshu clenched his fists. He had never done it, but he had seen kids crying after being injured by the firecrackers. At that time, she was quite afraid. Now, she was a little excited and had forgotten about that. But now that eldest sister asked, he remembered again. Gu Yunshu looked at his elder sister resentfully. After thinking about it, he felt that he did not have to be afraid. He was a little man and could handle dangerous matters. He took a deep breath and was about to nod when Gu Yundong said to him in a low voice, "Eldest sister doesn't dare either. Why don't you ask Brother Shao to help us light them?" Gu Yunshu held his breath and ran towards the Shao family after being pushed by Gu Yundong. The Tong family members standing behind Gu Yundong were speechless. Actually, they dared. However, they could only be invisible now. They did not dare to say or ask anything. On the other hand, the young lady, Gu Yunka, looked up as she ate peanuts. "Elder sister, Kiki will light the fire. Kiki is amazing." Gu Yundong looked at the little one beside her leg and coughed lightly. She lowered her head and said, "How about we let you set off the fireworks later? Those will fly into the sky with a swish. It's very beautiful." The little girl thought for a moment and nodded. Beautiful. She was very vain now. When she heard that she was beautiful, her eyes immediately lit up and she waited obediently. Shao Qingyuan came over very quickly with a smile on his face. When he met Gu Yundong's gaze, his smile became a little strange. Gu Yundong quickly looked away and said to him, "You do this." "Okay." Shao Qingyuan immediately agreed. He went forward, took the firecrackers, and tied them to a long wooden stick. After handing the head of the wooden stick to Gu Yundong, he took a matchstick and blew on it. He went forward and lit the primer before immediately retreating. The next moment, a crackling sound rang in everyone's ears. Chapter 231. Receiving red packets for the new year after the fireworks. The Gu residence was about to close, so Shao Qingyuan went back. However, when he returned home, he went straight to the roof and lay on it to listen to the continuous firecrackers in the village. He turned his head slightly and looked at the Gu family. Unfortunately, the Gu family's house was built so high that he could only see the walls. Not daring to light a fire? Well, if you say you don't dare, so be it. On New Year's Eve, Shao Qingyuan lay on the roof and stayed up all night. Early in the morning on the first day of New Year, Madame Yang put on new clothes for the two children and sat happily in front of the dressing table to put on makeup. Previously, Gu Yundong saw that her hand was so cold that they had frostbite, so she bought frostbite cream. Later on, she even bought face cream and lip cream to prevent her skin and lips from cracking and bleeding from the cold. Madame Yang had been using it for a while, and her face was much tenderer now. After cleaning up, the three of them left the room and ran to Gu Yundong's room to pay their New Year greetings. Gu Yundong held a red packet in his hand and gave one to each of them. After dinner, she gave each of the Tong family a red packet. Soon after, Dong Xilan brought the three children to pay a New Year visit. Gu Yundong had prepared a lot of dried fruits, pastries, and sweets. If anyone came, Gu Yundong made sugar water, representing the sweetness of the new year. The Gu family was very lively. Many people came one after another. Shi Dashan's family of 4, Feng Daning's family of 4, as well as the people who worked in the workshop, the villagers who built her house, and other families who had connections to all came happily. Gu Yinshu and his sister had already gone to the village chief's house to pay their New Year greetings. They were also looking for Neo Dan to play with. On the other hand, Shao Qingyuan hadn't come. At noon, when everyone was almost home, he came over to eat. This was what they had agreed on at that time. He would eat breakfast at the Zhong family's house and lunch and dinner at the Gu family's house. This way, he would not be alone for the new year. Gu Yundong had also prepared a red packet for him. Unexpectedly, before he could take it out, Shao Qingyuan handed one to her. The two of them were stunned at the same time. Gu Yundong blinked and heard Shao Qingyuan say, "I thought that Annie might not remember this, so I prepared it for you. You'll have a red packet for the new year, too." Madame Yang really did not remember that. She had even happily accepted one. Gu Yundong's eyes burned as she looked at the redness in her palm. Chapter 232. The Qian family's granny is here on the second day of the new year. Everyone started to visit their relatives. Dong Xiulan brought the children to her parents' house. Gu Yundong did not have any relatives to visit, so she brought Madame Yang and the other two to the county school to wish Mr. Qin a happy new year. In the afternoon, they went to the Liu residence. Old Master Liu had a married eldest daughter who happened to be back, so they did not go out. On the third day of the new year, Gu Yundong did not go out again. Zhong Gang brought his family over, and Zhao Zhu actually brought Goshing over to pay New Year greetings. On the fourth day of the new year, an unexpected person came to the door. This person was wearing patched clothes and holding a walking stick. Her hair indicated that she was already half 100 years old, and she was trembling as she stood at the entrance and looked around. Father Tong almost thought that she was here to beg. After asking a few more questions, he found out that this old lady was old Madame Qian from the neighboring village. She said that she was here to return the money. However, when she reached the house and saw the imposing door, she was a little afraid. Her heart was beating like a drum, so she hesitated and did not dare knock. Father Tong did not recognize this person and quickly went to report to Yundong. Yundong asked her to come in first. Seeing that the old lady was very cold, she quickly moved the brazier over to let her warm up. At this moment, she also remembered who the Qian family in the neighboring village was. It was the big Qian that she had caught with when he came to her house to be a thief with Zhuangzi and Hu Liang. Back then, when she asked the four of them to hand over 5 taels of silver, Hu Liang handed it over. Zhao Zhu's family was all right, and they gritted their teeth and handed it over. Zhuangzi's family handed over a little, and the rest was paid off. Only Big Qian. At that time, 3 of the 4 people's families had arrived, but no one from his family had come. Therefore, in the end, he left after writing an IOU. There was no news after he left. Later, when Zhuangzi became familiar with her, he told her that Big Qian had gone out to look for work. He only had one grandmother. She was old and clumsy. When Big Qian was born, he fell sick. His parents brought him to the county city to see a doctor. The county city was very chaotic that year. At that time, the county magistrate was not only afraid of death, but also extremely stupid. There was a fight in the city every other day. His parents were implicated and both died. In the end, Big Qian was brought back by a fellow villager. He even recovered from his illness. Rumors spread among the villagers in an instant. They said that he was a jinx who doomed his parents and exchanged his parents' lives for his own. Big Qian had been criticized since he was young. Even though his grandmother did not believe those words and was good to him, he still developed an inferiority complex and a sensitive and malicious personality. He didn't have any friends when he was young and was often beaten up until he was covered in injuries. Later on, he slowly grew up and knew how to fight back, but he couldn't beat most of them. Hu Liang could be considered his first friend. Not only did he help him when he was beaten up, but he also brought him along. After following him, Big Qian knew that what Hu Liang did was not the right path. But what did it matter? They were friends and should help each other. Besides, these people scolded him and hit him first. They only stole a little and didn't hurt them. Look, after he followed Hu Liang, these people were scared to death when they saw him. Grandma Qian was furious because of this. But what could she do? She was old and could not control it. It was not until a few months ago when Grandma Qian fainted from anger and the doctor said that she could not be agitated anymore that Big Qian came back to his senses. He only had one family member. They had relied on each other since he was young. How could he bear to let anything happen to her? Therefore, Big Qian went to Hu Liang and said that he did not plan to fool around in the future and would farm obediently. Of course, Hu Liang was unwilling. Even Zhuangzi and Goushing could not understand at that time. They scolded him for being ungrateful and worse than a beast. However, Big Qian had already made up his mind. He had no choice. In the end, Hu Liang asked him to do one last job. At that time, they had gone to steal Yundong's money, but they failed. Chapter 233. Return the money. Not only did he fail, but he also had to pay 5 taels of silver. How could the Qian family have it? Actually, the old lady of the Qian family had also heard that something had happened to her grandson and rushed to Yongfu village. However, she walked slowly and met Big Qian halfway. The next day, he went out to look for work and never came back. Yundong had never thought of urging them to repay their debts. Although she had an IOU on hand, she did not write down the repayment date at that time. After knowing that Big Qian only had Grandma Qian at home, she would not go. Unexpectedly, Grandma Qian came to visit during the new year. The room was warm. Grandma Qian felt that her hands were not as cold as before, so she slowly took out a cloth bag. The cloth bag was spread out in her hand. She opened it layer by layer, slowly revealing the silver inside. Trembling, she placed the silver pieces on the table one by one and counted them as she did so. When she was done, she looked at Yundong. "Miss, This is the 5 taels of silver that we owe you. I brought it all over." Yundong was speechless for a long time. Grandma Qian lowered her head and said in a low voice, "Big Qian is a good child. He just took a wrong turn in a moment of folly and won't do it again. He didn't want to default on this money. That day, he ran out to find work and only came back this morning. As soon as he arrived home, he said that he had earned the money he owed you. Now that he's tired and sleeping at home, I brought it over for you. Miss, I'm sorry. Please forgive him and don't blame him. Okay?" Yundong met her slightly turbid eyes and felt a lump in her throat. After a while, she said in a slightly hoarse voice, "Yes, he'll forgive him if he can change his ways." The wrinkles on Grandma Qian's face loosened, and she smiled until her eyes narrowed. All right. He'll go back now." After saying that, she took her walking stick and was about to leave. She did not even ask for the IOU. Yundong quickly helped her sit down. "Granny Qian, there's no hurry to leave. It's the new year. How can you not even drink a glass of water when you come to my house? Come, this is sugar water. Try it. It's sweet." "Miss, besides, Big Qian even gave me an IOU back then. I don't even know where I put it. I have to find it and return it to you, lest I can't explain it in the future, right?" When Grandma Qian heard this, she remembered that there was such a thing. This time, it was not easy for her to leave. Yundong placed the walking stick aside and stuffed a warm cup into her hand. She subconsciously picked it up and took a sip. She was stunned. It was really sweet. It was different from the brown sugar she drank when she was young. Other than sweetness, there was no other taste. Yundong brought her soft pastries again, but the old man refused to eat them. At this moment, Yunshu and Yunka returned. She waved and asked them to coax Grandma Qian to eat. She turned around and returned to her room, quickly finding the IOU. She looked at the note in her hand and sighed slightly. She had to accept the 5 taels of silver. Since the guy had done it, he had to pay the price. If she saw that the other party was pitiful and let him go easily, then how could she manage the workshop and shop? When the other party did something wrong later, he would cry in front of her and complain. Then, her workshop would at most be at this size. However, she could not watch Grandma Qian go back just like that. Grandma Qian was a good person. She had never thought of giving this old woman a hard time. Moreover, to be able to earn 5 taels of silver in such a short period of time, Big Qian was clearly not too stupid. Chapter 234. Unexpected person. When Yundong came out again, she had something in her hand. Grandma Qian, who was in the central room, was indeed coaxed by the 2 children to eat something. The smile on her face became brighter. "Grandma Qian, this is the IOU. Take it back and let Big Qian burn it in the stove. Then, the debt between us will be written off." Grandma Qian took the note and opened the cloth bag. She carefully placed the note inside and covered it before putting it back in her arms. Then he'll leave now. She felt a little embarrassed after eating such good pastries. She quickly grabbed her walking stick and was about to leave. Yundong smiled. "There's no hurry. There's still something here for you to bring back." "Huh? Why are you giving something to me?" When she narrowed her eyes and saw the cloth and meat in her hand, she widened her eyes in shock. This is for me? Why are you giving it to me?" "It's not just for you. Zhuangzi and Gaoxing's families also have it. They've also returned the money." She didn't mention the New Year goods that these 2 families were given for working for her. Did Grandma Qian think that the Gu family was kind enough to offer meat and cloth as a reward for returning the money? She was a little confused now, but the Shi family and the Zhao family had them. She thought that everyone had agreed. Yundong saw that her hand was trembling slightly, so she called Tong Shuitao over and handed her the things. "Send Granny Qian back." All right. Tong Shuitao took the things and helped Grandma Qian away. Yundong did not turn around to get busy until they had completely walked out of the door. What she did not know was that not long after they left the door, Tong Shuitao squatted down and carried Grandma Qian away. The Qian family's matters were settled. After the 4th day of the new year, the workshop started work again on the 5th day of the new year. The villagers were very excited. They even went to the Liu family's courtyard early in the morning and started to clean up. Yundong also gave everyone a red packet for opening the business. It was not much. 10 copper coins per person was just a token to get good luck. The shop in the county city was also open. Zhuangzi had an especially comfortable New Year. How should he put it? He ate well and had work to do. Most importantly, the relatives who used to look down on his family now had a hint of flattery in their words. Zhuangzi was very impatient with these people. In the past, he had never visited his relatives during the New Year. When something happened to his family, he had never seen these people reach out. They only made sarcastic remarks. In the past few years, the Sure couple would take Xian'er for a walk. After all, the two children were already grown. If they want to get married in the future, their reputation would be very important. This year, Zhuangzi had followed them for 3 days just to show off. There were actually people who wanted to arrange a marriage for Zhuangzi, but Zhuangzi rejected them expressionlessly. He even went to see Big Qian and Goshing. When he found out that Big Qian had returned the money and the Gu family had even sent something over, he patted his shoulder and sighed. Work hard in the future and take care of your grandmother. If there's a chance in the future, they'll help you ask if you can work for the Gu family. It's really good to work for the Gu family. It's easy to talk about marriage in the future if you have money. Zhuangzi now held Gu Yundong in high esteem. He felt that if Gu Yundong could use him, she would definitely be able to use Big Qian in the future. Although she was a little cruel at times, as long as he listened, he would be able to get candy. Big Qian was still a little uncomfortable, but when he thought of Tong Shuai and those things that his grandmother had brought back that day, the discomfort he felt toward the Gu family was almost gone. Goshing was now working for his father, helping him tidy up the orchard. This guy was also very obedient. The 4 thieves had all turned over a new leaf, other than Hu Liang, who had broken his legs and was still lying in bed. Even his parents had begun to despise him. Gu Yundong's workshop and shop were on the right track. There was no problem for the time being, but an unexpected person came to Yongfu village that day. Chapter 235. Aunt Ku is here when they saw another carriage drive into the village and asked for the Gu family's address. The villagers of Yongfu village were already numb. In any case, almost all the carriages entering the village were looking for the Gu family. However, the children in the village still skipped behind the carriage to join in the fun. The carriage stopped at the entrance of the Gu residence. A woman in plain clothes got out of the carriage. After the person handed the money to the coachman, the carriage turned around and left. The people behind the carriage suddenly realized that the carriage was rented. The woman stood at the Gu family's entrance and looked up at the imposing green brick-tiled house in front of her. She laughed and said in a low voice, "I knew that girl was capable. It's only been a while, but she actually has the money to build such a big house." Madame Chui did not know her. Seeing that she was standing at the door and did not enter, she could not help but take a step forward. "May I ask who you are looking for? Gu Yundong's house is here, right?" The woman retracted her gaze and asked with a smile. MDM Chui nodded. "Yes, this is the Gu family. May I ask who you are?" The woman was about to answer when the sound of a carriage rolling suddenly came from behind. A child shouted, "Gu Yunshu, you're back. Your relative is here." In the carriage, Gu Yunshu scratched his head. "Relative?" He opened the curtain of the carriage and looked outside. Coincidentally, the woman turned around and their eyes met. The woman smiled. Yes, the skinny and weak little fellow finally had some flesh on his face. He looked decent in his student uniform and was somewhat useful to Gu Yundong. Gu Yunshu's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly wanted to jump down from the carriage. Father Tong was so frightened that he quickly hugged him and let him land steadily. The next moment, Gu Yunshu rushed towards the woman. "Aunt Ke, why are you here? When did you come? Have you eaten? Why don't you come in?" Aunt Ke hugged him and squatted down to pinch his little face. "I just came over. Did you come back from school? If I had known earlier, I would have let the carriage walk slower. Who knows, we might have bumped into each other on the way. I've been riding the carriage all day. I'm very tired. In order to reach your village before dark, the coachman worked so hard that my old bones almost scattered. I only ate 2 little buns on the way. I specially came to your house on an empty stomach and let your sister cook braised pork for me. Io, you're getting more and more beautiful. You look really energetic in these clothes. Have you been in school for a few days? How's the teacher of the school? Did any of your classmates bully you? How many friends have you made? Is the school very far away? Your elder sister is really too much. Why didn't she find a closer place for you? Look at the cold weather. You have to rush to school in the morning. You'll fall sick from the cold. Gu Yinshu chuckled. He knew that Aunt Ke looked serious, but she could ramble on for 2 hours without stopping in front of him and his sister. But even so, Gu Yinshu was very happy and did not find her annoying at all. It's only been a month. Aunt, let's go in first. It's cold at the door. We'll bring you to see our house. My house is very beautiful. Come. He pulled Aunt Ke inside. Eldest sister, mother, Kiki, Aunt Ke is here. Gu Yundong was in the backyard with Madame Yang and Gu Yunke. She did not know what had happened in front. Now, that Gu Yinshu was shouting at the top of his lungs. She could vaguely hear him. She was stunned and quickly ran out. Aunt Ke, it's really you. Why are you here? Chapter 236. Serious business. Aunt Ke no longer had that kind expression when facing Gu Yundong. She snorted softly. Why? Can't I come? Of course you can come. The two little ones were talking about you 2 days ago. Gu Yundong quickly invited her to sit in the central room. Gu Yinshu had already rushed over to pour some sugar water. Aunt Ke took a sip and nodded. Looks like your business is doing well. Gu Yundong had sent her and yet some New Year's goods before the New Year. She had asked Zhong Gang's family's bodyguard agency to deliver them. Among them was white sugar. She had also written a letter, but she had roughly mentioned her business without writing in detail. It's not bad. Aunt Ke nodded at her. You're pretending to be humble again. Then she looked at Gu Yunke. The young lady had not seen her for months. Although she knew Aunt Ke, she was still young and her mind was a little blurry. At this moment, she was standing behind her and looking at her curiously. Aunt Ke's heart melted from her big, watery eyes. She hurriedly waved her hand. Kiki doesn't remember Aunt Ke? In the past, when you were at my house, you insisted on sleeping with me. Aunt Ke even told you many stories. Have you forgotten? Yes. Was it the big tabby cat story? Oh, so you still remember. Aunt Ke was even happier. Do you still want to hear it? This time, they'll tell you about the big yellow dog. The little girl nodded. Seeing her brothers and sisters looking at her with smiles, she immediately threw herself into Aunt Ke's arms. Aunt Ke had endless things to say to the two children. After speaking to Gu Yundong briefly, she ignored her. It was Gu Yinshu who whispered to her, Eldest sister, Aunt Ke said that she only ate 2 small buns today and wants to eat your braised pork. All right, eldest sister will cook it. Gu Yundong laughed. She instructed Gu Yinshu to chat with her, but he must not tire Aunt Ke out. She turned her head and instructed Madame Zhong to clean up the guest room. Then, she went into the kitchen. She had not cooked in a long time, so she could show off her skills. Aunt Ke was tired after all. She went to the guest room to sleep for almost an hour. When she woke up, she could have dinner. However, when she saw the unfamiliar man sitting in the Gu family's restaurant, she could not help but raise her eyebrows. As Aunt Ke, who had grown up with her childhood sweetheart and had a good relationship with him, she knew what Shao Qingyuan's gaze meant. No matter how obscure it was, she could clearly see the gaze that would drift to Gu Yundong from time to time. Moreover, this man was very aggressive. One look, and one could tell that he was the kind of person who would not give up until he achieved his goal. Furthermore, he listened to Gu Yundong's every word and entered the kitchen whenever he was told to. Gu Yundong was used to his dog-like temper and would not fancy other men. Sooner or later, she would fall into his hands. Aunt Ke sighed inwardly. She had wanted to matchmake her silly nephew Niet Song and Gu Yundong, but now it seemed that she should forget it. She would just focus on watching the show. Shao Qingyuan was a man of few words. He knew Aunt Ke and knew that she had helped the Gu family a lot. Hence, his attitude was friendly. He greeted her first and quietly became a listener. He ate braised pork, seeing that his movements were not slow. Even if Aunt Ke wanted to chat with the two children, she forcefully endured it and became a refined, noble woman who did not speak during meals. Let's eat first. However, after eating, it was more important to talk about serious matters first. Chapter 237. Does Big Sister not want me anymore? Aunt Ku wiped her mouth and went straight to the point. I came this time mainly because there's news from Dr. Song. Yundong was shocked. Joy flashed across her face, and she almost stood up in excitement. Really? Where is he? In Qing'an Prefecture. Qing'an Prefecture? Yundong was stunned. Wasn't that Aunt Ku? Physician he from Huimin Medical Center told me. He still remembers your mother's condition. Physician Song went back to Shuanha Prefecture, but he only stayed for an hour to get some herbs before leaving. He said that he was going to Qing'an Prefecture. There's an important patient waiting for him there. Yundong clenched her fists tightly and trembled slightly. She looked at Madame Yang, who was still confused, and the hope in her heart grew. I received the news yesterday and came over early this morning. Dr. Song should have left yesterday. He probably has to stay in Qing'an Prefecture for a period of time. At the very least, he has to treat that important patient. What do you think now? Yundong slowly exhaled and held Madame Yang's hand with her fingers. The latter smiled and put her other hand on it. Yundong's voice was slow and firm. I'm going to Qing'an Prefecture, of course. Anka smiled and said, I think so too. All right, doctor, he said that he doesn't know the address of Dr. Song's patient. If you go to Qing'an Prefecture, you can go to Huimin Medical Center there. You should be able to find out Dr. Song's whereabouts. Yundong nodded. Okay. You previously said that your father agreed to meet you in Qing'an Prefecture. Since you're going over this time, are you going to ask about him? Yes. Yundong said. Actually, I was thinking of going to Qing'an Prefecture after the Lantern Festival. I didn't expect you to send Dr. Song's message. Then I might as well set off early. There's no problem. Now that she had money, the workshop was stable, and she had a shop. There were servants at home who could take care of Madame Yang and the two children. Therefore, the matter of finding her father became urgent. After the Lantern Festival, she planned to make a trip to Qing'an Prefecture alone. But since Dr. Song was there, she had to bring Madame Yang along. Shu listened from the side and quickly understood. He immediately jumped up and asked, Eldest sister, can mother's illness be cured and father be found? Guyinka jumped as well. That's great, that's great. When Madame Yang heard the word father, she suddenly looked up and her eyes lit up. Although Yundong also hoped that everything would go her way, she still had to tell the truth. I'm not sure yet. Of course, it's best if we can cure mother and find father, but nothing is absolute. I'm not sure yet. Chapter 238. Explanation. Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry. She simply carried her out. As they walked, she coaxed her softly. How can eldest sister not want Kiki? Eldest sister is bringing mother to the doctor. Kiki also knows that mother is sick, right? The little girl buried her head in her arms, but she still nodded gently. That doctor is very far away now. Your eldest sister has to bring mother over quickly. This way, she can bring mother back as soon as possible. At that time, Kiki will be able to see eldest sister and mother again. At that time, will mother recover from her illness? It's possible. That doctor is very powerful. If eldest sister finds him, mother's illness will be cured. The little girl still hugged her neck tightly, and her sobbing gradually became softer. After a long time, she said softly and firmly, Then eldest sister go. He'll be good. He'll wait at home. Independent Illinois also take care of older brother and not make him cry. Yes, Kiki is the best. The little girl lowered her head shyly and muttered softly, I cried just now. It wasn't very good. Yundong burst out laughing. She looked down at Shu, who had been following behind her silently. If eldest sister leaves, you will be the biggest man in our family. You have to take good care of your sister and study well. If you have anything you don't understand, ask the teacher. If you feel uncomfortable, tell Aunt Ku in time. Don't take off your clothes when you're hot. You'll catch a cold, understand? That's right. Yundong had already thought it through. While she was away, she would ask Aunt Ku to help take care of Yunka, who was staying at home. She thought that Aunt Ku must have had the intention to do that since she delivered the message personally at this time. Yes, the little guy hung his head low and was also in a low mood. Eldest sister was leaving, their mother was leaving, and their father was not around. Shu felt that his mission was very important. Seeing that the two children were unhappy, Yundong could not help but secretly sigh. After all, they had been together for a few months and had never been separated. This parting was also sudden, so it was normal for her to find it difficult to accept it. Yundong coaxed the two children as she explained in detail what they should do after she left. Afraid that they wouldn't remember, she simply wrote it down. Anyway, Shu knew how to read. In addition, there were many people at home. The two children would not be short of food and clothes. The conditions in the old Gu family were much more difficult than now. Yundong only came out after sending the two of them back to their rooms. She went to the guest room to look for Aunt Ku. Before she could speak, the latter said, "Don't worry, they'll stay at your house while you're gone. I have no problem taking care of the two children. Besides, I didn't expect you to have servants at your house. They can help." Yundong trusted Aunt Ku. She took out a banknote. Aunt Ku frowned. "Why? Is this consider my salary? Do you want to be my boss?" She sounded very unhappy. Yundong shook her head. "Of course not. This is the cost of food. You have to eat and wear, right? Keep the rest on you for emergencies. I don't know, we'll be back. When the weather warms up later, you still have to buy cloth to make clothes for Shu and the rest." Aunt Ku accepted it in satisfaction when she heard her tone. Yundong came out after exchanging a few words with her. She still had some things to tell the Tong family. However, not long after she walked out of the guest room, she saw a figure standing in the courtyard. Shao Qingyuan's expression flickered under the night sky, looking a little cold. Chapter 239. He'll only be relaxed with you around seeing her. Shao Qingyuan straightened his body slightly and walked towards her. After standing still, he said, "I'll go with you." Yundong shook her head. "No. If you encounter any danger on the way with nobody except Annie, I can help." Yundong smiled. "I brought my mother, brother, and sister here safely even when I was escaping from the wilderness. Now, my mother is the only one I'm taking. There's no problem." Shao Qingyuan frowned, but he didn't say anything. Yundong sighed. "If you leave, what will happen to the family? What about the workshop? What about the shop? Aunt Ku is not from the village after all. She is not familiar with many things. The Tong family are servants. Although the people in the village don't say anything, there are many people who don't take them seriously. Mr. Qin lives in the county city. If anything happens, he won't be able to rush over in time. As long as you're here, I won't have anything to worry about. As long as you're here, I won't have anything to worry about." Shao Qingyuan's breathing suddenly stopped, and his heart raced. He lowered his eyes slightly and smiled bitterly. This person was always capable. He had already made up his mind to follow her no matter what she said, but he was convinced with just one sentence. He really wanted to seal her mouth. Okay. In the end, he agreed. "He'll take care of your family and protect your siblings." "Thank you." Yundong was telling the truth. With Shao Qingyuan's personality, identity, and ability, she was most assured to leave the family matters to him. Without Shao Qingyuan, she was not sure if she could go away so firmly. It was also at this moment that she realized that she seemed to have placed too much importance on him. Yundong could not help but rub the space between her eyebrows. She thought that she had to sort out some feelings and think them through. She took out a lot of banknotes for Shao Qingyuan. "You have to accept this money this time. The orchard will require a lot of money to buy seedlings. Also, you have to come to the workshop to distribute the wages. After the Lantern Festival, you have to find Uncle Feng to build your own workshop. I've already drawn the specific blueprints. He'll give them to you later. You and Uncle Feng can discuss it." Yundong looked up. "In short, you're in charge of everything here." "Okay." As they were leaving tomorrow, Yundong spoke a lot. After Shao Qingyuan finished giving instructions, she went to the village chief Chanliang's house and said that she would be away for a while. After that, she returned to pack her luggage. Actually, there wasn't much. There were only some clothes and shoes in her bag. The rest were all in her spatial storage. Chapter 240. Departure to Qing'an Prefecture. Yundong had to go to Qin Wenhang's school. Qin Wenhang also knew a little about her family, but he really did not know that Madame Yang's illness needed to be treated by Dr. Song. He knew Dr. Song. He had even met him back then and said a few words. That person was really capable. However, back then, the late emperor was muddle-headed. Physician Song was clearly skilled in medicine, but he was framed. If not for the fact that he had once saved the late Empress Dowager's life, and the Empress Dowager begged for mercy, Imperial Physician Song might not even be able to keep his life. Unfortunately, ever since Imperial Physician Song left the capital, Qin Wenhang did not know where he went. He heard that the emperor wanted to hire him back to the Imperial Hospital. So he was in Qing'an Prefecture? Qin Wenhang asked Yundong to wait while he went to the study to write a letter. If you see Dr. Song, please help me pass this letter to him. Yin Shu, don't worry and leave everything to me. He'll also watch over your family. Okay. Gu Yundong received the letter and went to the Liu residence. She had met Old Master Liu a few times. Old Master Liu had imparted some business experience to her. Gu Yundong was quite grateful to him. This time, she came over to bid farewell to Liu Wei so that he wouldn't complain later that she didn't treat him as a friend. At the same time, if Old Master Liu had any experience, he could give Shao Qingyuan some pointers. Gu Yundong finally went to Gus. Zhuangzi was very happy to see her. He did not expect her to bring him such shocking news. When he heard that he should look for Shao Qingyuan if he had any problems in the future, he felt terrible. In the future, he would settle his own matters and try not to trouble others. After a whole circle, she had said everything she needed to say. Shao Qingyuan, Aunt Ku, Teacher Qin, and Old Master Liu were all reliable. She had nothing to worry about. Gu Yundong took a deep breath. After getting into the carriage, she went straight to the city gate. However, this time, they did not go home after leaving the city gate. Instead, they went straight to Qing'an Prefecture. Madame Yang opened the curtains and saw an unfamiliar scene flying in front of her. She felt a little flustered. She quickly lifted the curtain and saw Gu Yundong driving the carriage. She immediately calmed down. Gu Yundong heard the commotion behind her and could not help but turn around. What's wrong, mother? Madame Yang shook her head slightly. Nothing. He'll sit down immediately. Gu Yundong smiled. There's something to eat in the cabinet beside the carriage. If mother wants to eat it, you can take it yourself. Oh, okay. Madame Yang nodded repeatedly and carefully opened the cabinet beside her. There was sugar, preserved fruit, oranges, pastries, and a container with water in it. Madame Yang looked around and finally took a sip of water. She felt a little better and sat down obediently. She didn't know how long she had maintained this posture. After enduring it for a while, she finally couldn't help but ask, Dong Dong, where are we going? Mother, do you still remember where father has repeatedly instructed us to meet? Madame Yang knew this answer and said almost without thinking, Qing'an Prefecture. Yes, let's go to Qing'an Prefecture. The carriage drove very quickly. She did not stop at noon and only took out warm pancakes and buns from her space and handed them to Madame Yang. She had bought them in the county previously. There were 2 large bags. After Madame Yang finished eating, Gu Yundong casually took a few bites. When the sky was about to turn dark, they finally arrived at their first stop. Chapter 241. Seeing Gu Yundong's foolish smile, this was a small town with a small population. There were only 2 or 3 good inns in the town. Gu Yundong chose a rather lively inn, and she only booked an upper room. When she was out, she naturally had to stay with Madame Yang. The day before, she slept late and woke up early. After dinner, she fell asleep as soon as she touched the pillow. On the other hand, Madame Yang was a little unaccustomed with her eyes open. Ah Shu and Kiki weren't around, but Dong Dong was. It was fine. Madame Yang turned sideways. She did not move, afraid that she would disturb Gu Yundong's rest. She just looked at her gently. Seeing that Gu Yundong had kicked the blanket away, she hurriedly covered her again nervously. Gu Yundong was a light sleeper when she was outside. She suddenly opened her eyes. Madame Yang immediately became helpless. Did I wake you up? I just wanted to cover you with a blanket. You'll catch a cold. Gu Yundong's expression immediately softened. She looked at the blanket on her body and said in a low voice, "It's okay. Go to sleep." Okay. This time, Madame Yang obediently closed her eyes and tried her best to fall asleep. Gu Yundong could not help but smile. She felt warm all over. Although her mother was innocent, she loved the children very much. She really hoped that they could successfully find Dr. Song this time and get him to treat her mother's illness. Her journey had been quite smooth. She hoped that this smoothness would continue. Gu Yundong closed her eyes and fell asleep quietly. The next morning, the two of them got up early and set off again. It was a long journey from Yongfu village to Qing'an Prefecture, and it was impossible for the horse to speed up every day. Even if they could take it, the horse could not. When she left home, the two little guys reminded her repeatedly to take good care of Windchaser. Therefore, Gu Yundong would be slow for a day if she rushed for 2 days. Dr. Song had only set off 2 days earlier than her. Qingyuan said that he was already old, so he definitely couldn't ride the carriage too quickly. Otherwise, he would fall sick. She should be able to make it. After 5 to 6 days, they were almost halfway through the journey. They would not always coincidentally encounter a town or county city and be able to stay in an inn. Sometimes, when it was dark and they happened to arrive at a village, they would stay here for the night. Just like this village called Fugao Village. It was quite fitting to call it a rich village. This village was much better than Yongfu Village. After all, the village was close to the official road, and there were many guests coming and going. There were even people selling snacks at the entrance of the village. Therefore, when Gu Yundong's carriage drove into the village, the adults who passed by only looked at it in surprise. Only a few children followed behind happily, as if they were joining in the fun. Gu Yundong went to look for the village chief directly. Hence, this Fugue village was not called for nothing. It was obvious that the village chief was much smarter than Chen Liang. He mentioned a bunch of benefits of the village so that he could raise the accommodation fee. Gu Yundong lived in the village chief's house. It was also a green brick house with many rooms. It was not a problem to vacate one of the rooms for Gu Yundong and her mother. They even included breakfast and dinner. The price was also within her acceptable range. Gu Yundong nodded and planned to go out to pull the carriage to the backyard. Beside the carriage stood a group of children. When they saw her come out, they ran away with a smile. Only one person was still standing there. That person was not a child. He was tall and big. He tilted his head slightly and smiled foolishly at Gu Yundong. However, when Gu Yundong saw the person's face clearly, her pupils constricted and she was stunned on the spot. Chapter 242. Unexpectedly, an old friend, the village chief, also saw that person when he came out. He frowned slightly, but he still said to him patiently, "It's already so late. Hurry up and go home. Don't stay outside." That person chuckled, turned around, and ran. Gu Yundong came back to her senses and asked, "Who was that?" "Oh, him. He came to our village a few months ago." The village chief didn't mind saying this. "I think he escaped from Yundong Prefecture in the past." It said that when he arrived at Qing'an Prefecture, he encountered chaos. His parents, wife, and daughter were gone. He was injured himself, and he became unclear. In the beginning, he was awake for most of the day, but now, as the village chief spoke, he shook his head. For now, it's already good enough if he's awake for 1 day and 2 days. When he first came, he even saw a doctor. The doctor said that he could be cured. There's a widow in our village. Seeing that he's penniless and sick, she married him and lived with him. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Why? Could they become husband and wife just because she sympathized him? Only a fool would believe that. The widow probably saw that he was good-looking, right? This was just a cover. If I may ask, how old is the widow? The village chief coughed lightly and looked a little strange. About 10 years older than him. Widow Sun's family background is not bad. Her husband has been dead for many years. It's fine to marry again. If this person's illness can be cured, it will be a happy thing. The village chief shook his head. Unfortunately, his condition is getting worse. Widow Sun is also impatient with him now. Look at the clothes he's wearing. Sigh. Yundong realized that the village chief was very nosy and open-minded. She knew that many villages did not allow widows to remarry, such as the old Gu family. Did that man say his wife and daughter were dead? The village chief nodded. Yes, he said it when he was sober. He was quite sad. He seemed to be very curious about his affairs. Why? Do you know him? Yundong shook her head decisively. No. The village chief had already led them to the backyard. He instructed his wife, Madame Zhong, who was tidying up the guest room, take care of Miss Gu and Madame Gu. Madame Zhong agreed and asked Yundong with a smile, "Where are you going and what are you going to do?" Yundong answered casually, but she looked a little dazed. She did not expect to meet Ming here. He had become a fool. Although her mother was also ignorant, her mother only did not understand and think about some profound things. As long as others explained it to her in a simple manner, she would be obedient and do it. However, the Ming just now had a silly smile on his face. He was like a person who could not take care of himself. There was also the matter of his parents, wife, and daughter dying. She did not expect that the last time she met her aunt would be that time outside Qing'an Prefecture City. Yundong did not feel guilty at all. Those who wanted to harm others would always be harmed. If it had been her eldest aunt's family back then, she would definitely have taken them away and protected them. Miss Gu, rest for a while. They'll call you again after dinner. Madame Zhong's voice pulled her back to her senses. Yundong put Ming's matter to the back of her mind and smiled at Madame Zhong. All right, thank you, Aunt. Madame Zhong shook her head and left the guest room. However, as soon as she left the house, she immediately ran to her room to look for her man in a hurry, looking mysterious. Chapter 243. Gossip couple. The village chief was happily eating peanuts with the money Yundong had given him. When he saw his wife enter, he only raised his eyes slightly. Have you tidied it up over there? All right, all right. Madame Zhong waved her hand and sat on the brick bed. She reached out and snatched the money from his hand before putting it away. The village chief wanted to say something, but he immediately stopped when she glared at him. Madame Zhong, on the other hand, was in high spirits. She leaned close to his ear and whispered, "Do you know what I found?" "What? Wasn't that Miss Gu the one who kept talking to us just now?" Her mother had been standing at the side and didn't speak. At first, I thought she was a mute, but I didn't expect. She pointed at her head. There seems to be a problem here. The village chief sat up straighter in surprise. Really? However, he shook his head slightly. It doesn't look like it. She's dressed neatly and cleanly. When she doesn't speak, she's like a quiet noblewoman. She's not at all the same as that half-wit who just came to our village. Madame Zhong pinched him. Do you still think that she's quite good-looking? You were looking so carefully. The village chief hurriedly shook his head. I didn't. As he spoke, he touched his chin. I was wondering why that little girl kept asking me about Ming. It turns out that her mother is also sick. Madame Zhong also ate a peanut, but it doesn't look as serious as Ming's. I heard her speak like a child. She's quite obedient. When she asked you, her tone was gentle. If you don't pay attention to her expression, she's really like a noblewoman. She dresses well too. Look, you said that too. Then why did you pinch me just now and blame me for looking at her? Madame Zhong glared at him fiercely. I can look, but you can't. She's a woman. As a man, you're a lecher if you look at her. The village chief said weakly, she's staying at our house. What if I don't see her clearly and mistake her for someone else? Yundong stood under the window outside and was speechless for a long time. She really did not mean to eavesdrop. She just wanted to come over and ask if Madame Zhong had hot water. She did not expect to hear the two of them talking about her name as soon as she walked over. After all, she was afraid of encountering a shady shop when she was outside, so she listened more. Unexpectedly, this couple was indeed a match made in heaven. They were both so gossipy. Since they did not have any ill intentions, Yundong did not say anything. She only stepped forward slightly and called aunt when she was far away. Other than the gossip factor that had been burning, Madame Zhong was not bad in other aspects. She would ask Yundong and her mother about their tastes and if they were used to the temperature here and if they needed more blankets. However, she would ask Yundong some personal questions from time to time. If she could answer, she would. If she could not, Yundong would smile. This made Madame Zhong even more itchy. Yundong was also speechless. Fortunately, they were only staying for a day. After dinner, she and Madame Yang went to rest. The next morning, Yundong prepared to set off. She led the carriage out and helped Madame Yang in. Unexpectedly, just as she was about to leave, Madame Zhong suddenly called out to her, Girl, I've packed some pickled radishes for you. Don't you like them? Take them and eat slowly on the way. Madame Zhong marinated the radish herself. Her family did not like it, but Yundong liked it very much. Madame Zhong was overjoyed. Yundong quickly went back and saw Madame Zhong walking over with a small jar. She quickly took it. Unexpectedly, Madame Yang's scream suddenly came from the carriage outside. Ah! Chapter 245, targeting Madame Yang. Yundong almost laughed out of anger. She looked at Fu Ming. Who's my uncle? You? My aunt is gone, and you've married someone else. What kind of uncle are you? Everyone understood. She turned out to be a relative of Fu Ming's late wife. Speaking of which, they were not connected now. However, if this uncle had indeed taken care of her in the past and treated her well, she could not be so heartless as to pretend not to know him. However, the village chief did not think so. He was smart and had interacted with Yundong before. From her attitude towards her mother, he knew that she was not an ungrateful person. Now that her attitude towards Fu Ming was so bad, there might have been a huge conflict in the past. Moreover, Yundong had stayed at his house for a night. How could she be being blocked at the door? Hence, the village chief waved his hand. All right. Why are you people so glib-tongued? How do you know if they were really close in the past? You keep muttering endlessly. You can't even settle your own matters properly, yet you still have the mood to care about other people's matters. Fu Ming panicked when he heard this. He thought that the village chief would stand on his side on account that he was from the same village. He planned to use public opinion to get Yundong to bring him away. He had seen clearly that not only did the Gu family have a carriage, but they were also dressed so well. They were much better than Widow Sunday. They must have met a noble and led a good life. In Fu Ming's impression, Yundong was an easy-to-deal-with young lady. Although he had been set up in the forest outside the Qing'an Prefecture last time, Yundong had mentioned that Uncle Wang wanted to avenge his daughter. He had always thought that there was indeed an Uncle Wang hiding in the dark and working together with Yundong. After all, Master Qian had died from a crossbow bolt shot from afar. Uncle Wang must have taught Yundong. Otherwise, how could this 13-year-old brat be so scheming? Yundong, you can't leave your uncle alone. Otherwise, what if your aunt comes looking for you in the middle of the night? You don't know how hard my life is now. I can't even sleep well without enough food and clothes. As he spoke, he looked at Madame Yang. Take me away. I can help you take care of your mother. Look at your mother now. You don't have a father, and no one will want your mother in the future. Although I've injured my brain, I can be cured. At that time, your mother will have someone to rely on, and you can also have someone to rely on. Think about it. Isn't that right? Fu Ming had always known that Madame Yang was quite beautiful. In the past, because she had to work in the Gu family, she did not dress well. Her face was sallow, and her fingers were rough. Therefore, he felt that although she was good-looking, she was still not as good-looking as Gu Qing'an. However, now that he looked at Madame Yang, who had already cleaned up, he actually felt that Gu Qing'an was a little ugly. Compared to Widow's son, the difference was like heaven and earth. Even if there was something wrong with her brain, she looked good, right? But Yundong was infuriated by his words. Not only was he shameless, but but he also dared to have designs on her mother? The surrounding people were stunned when they heard this. Fu Ming had a wife. At this moment, no one noticed Yundong. Hence, she rushed forward and raised the wooden stick in her hand to hit him. Even a toad wants to eat swan meat. It has to see what it is. I don't even want to look at you. My little aunt will come to look for me in the middle of the night. Let her come. It'll make her soul dissipate. Do you believe me? Chapter 246. Madame Yang takes action. Yundong was merciless. Everyone was stunned. This young lady was so young, but she was so cruel. Madame Jiang watched her attack excitedly. However, as the village chief's wife, she still stopped her when she saw her fellow villager being beaten up. However, no one could stop the invincible Yundong, especially after what she had said. Just listen to it. She wasn't even afraid of ghosts and deities, but she wanted to destroy little Aunt's soul. How much hatred did she have? Fu Ming dodged left and right, screaming in pain as he spoke. Help! Hurry up and stop her. She's crazy. She's just like her mother. She's crazy. As he spoke, a villager with a hoe came over. He quickly went forward and snatched the hoe from him. He turned around and smashed it on Yundong's head. You don't know what's good for you. Then go to hell. Yundong sneered. She dodged the attack and hit his leg with a stick. Fu Ming gasped in pain, and the hoe hit her even harder. Seeing that someone was about to die, the village chief hurriedly called for everyone to stop him. What are you waiting for? Separate the two of them. Everyone instantly rushed forward. Because Fu Ming's hoe was even more dangerous, the villagers went to catch him first to prevent him from smashing a bloody hole in the little girl's head. At this moment, Yundong hit him hard between his legs. Everyone was speechless. It felt so painful. All the men present subconsciously clamped their legs together and gasped, their faces turning pale. Fu Ming's hoe had also been taken away by the original owner. He could only hold a certain spot and roll on the ground in pain. He was already in such a miserable state, so naturally, no one went to catch him. They even took 2 steps back, feeling that it didn't hurt so much anymore. Yundong was also held back by Madame Jiang and the others. A woman reprimanded her. What's wrong with you, girl? You're so ruthless. You hit someone with a stick and even hit their crotch. How old are you? You're too shameless. F***CK. Where did this B***TCH come from? Yundong suddenly turned her head and glared at that person. The woman was so frightened by the coldness in her eyes that she let go and took a step back. However, when she thought about it, she felt indignant. This was her village. What was going on if she was frightened by a 10-year-old girl? Why are you glaring at me? Am I wrong? No matter what, he's still your elder. Didn't you? The woman didn't dare to say anything else. In the end, she muttered and left. Fu Ming is right. Look at how fierce she is. She's a lunatic. The others did not dare to say anything. Madame Jiang quickly comforted her. All right. It was that Fu Ming who spoke nonsense. He's not clear-headed. Don't mind him. Yundong did not want to argue with him. Wasn't she going to pretend that she did not know him and leave when she saw him this time? But this B***TCH insisted on coming to find trouble. Was it her fault? Yundong was stopped, and no one was beside Fu Ming. Therefore, no one noticed that a figure had passed by with a stone and smashed it towards Fu Ming's head. Who asked you to bully Dong Dong? Ah, Fu Ming grunted and fell silent. Everyone was stunned. Yundong's eyes widened. Mother! She broke free from everyone's grip and quickly went forward to hug Madame Yang. Madame Yang looked at the bloody hole in Fu Ming's head and her mind went blank for a moment. It was only when Yundong came over that she threw the stone away and said, Dong Dong, don't be afraid. Mother will protect you. Chapter 247. My mother was just protecting me. Yundong's eyes were hot as she stroked Madame Yang's back. Yes, I'm not afraid. As she spoke, she glanced at Fu Ming with a cold gaze, but she still stood up calmly and shielded Madame Yang behind her. Everyone finally reacted. The village chief's expression changed drastically as he shouted, What are you waiting for? Hurry up and get a doctor. The two of you carry Fu Ming in first. The incident happened at the entrance of the village chief's house, so they naturally carried the patient to his house first. Yundong and Madame Yang were also surrounded. With such a thing happening, they definitely could not leave. Although Fu Ming had only been in Fugui village for a few months, he had married widow's son and could be considered a member of Fugui village. The outsider had injured someone from Fugui village, so she had to give an explanation. Moreover, this explanation could not be low. Now, even the village chief and Madame Zhong could not stand on her side. Yundong and Madame Yang were invited back to the village chief's house. The village chief asked someone to watch them and see how Fu Ming was doing before making a decision. The doctor in the village was quickly invited over. He checked Fu Ming. Fortunately, he was still alive. Madame Yang was not very strong, and the stone was about the size of a fist. Although it had a sharp edge, it was not fatal. It was just that there was a lot of blood. It looked very scary. However, he had been unconscious all this time. They did not know what would happen. The doctor applied medicine, performed acupuncture, and bandaged him. It depended on the situation. What if he suddenly died? Madame Zhong heard the doctor's words from outside and quietly went out. She ran to the house, where Yundong and her mother were locked up. She said to the villager watching over them, "I came to ask them for the money for the treatment." The villagers let her in. When Madame Zhong entered, she saw that Yundong had a calm expression and still had the energy to patiently comfort the uneasy Madame Yang. She sighed in her heart. This girl was really not an ordinary girl. No wonder she dared to take her mother, who knew nothing, on a long trip alone. Unfortunately, although Madame Yang loved her daughter, she still got into trouble. She quickly walked to the two of them and met Yundong's smiling face. Suddenly, she felt that there was nothing to worry about, so she whispered about Fu Ming's situation. Yundong nodded, indicating that she understood. Madame Zhong looked at Madame Yang again and whispered, "If your mother is like this and you encounter such a thing again in the future, she'll probably be a burden." "My mother is fine, Auntie. She's just protecting me." At this moment, Yundong had completely forgotten the thought of not allowing Madame Yang and the other two to drag her down when she first came to this world. Now, be it Madame Yang or Yunshu and Yunka, they had already become her family and responsibility. She would protect them. Even if Fu Ming really died today, she would not let anything happen to her mother. Madame Zhong suddenly felt inexplicably envious of Madame Yang. If she became stupid one day and lost her mind, she would bring trouble to her children. Would she have the same treatment as Madame Yang? It was said that there was no filial son in front of a sickbed after a long time. For example, Guang from their village was a famous filial son in this area. However, his mother was sick and could not take care of herself. He became impatient and went home. As she was thinking, she suddenly heard a sharp voice from the door. Madame Zhang's expression changed slightly. She quickly stood up and reminded Yundong, "Widow's son is here." "No, she's not a widow anymore. Aya, she's Fu Ming's current wife. We'll go out and take a look." Chapter 248. Yundong is easy to bully? Madame Zhong went out and saw widow's son walking towards Fu Ming's room impatiently. "What's going on? I heard that my husband was beaten up." His head was split open. "Who beat him up? Get someone to come out and talk to me." Widow's son was a shrew, but she only went to the bed to take a look at Fu Ming before quickly looking away. Fu Ming was indeed good-looking. Back then, she had taken a fancy to his appearance and thought that he had fled to this place. He did not have any relatives or friends and did not even have a place to stay. If she was married to him, she would not have parents-in-law. She could still be in charge at home. She was also familiar with the village. Although Fu Ming was silly from time to time, didn't the doctor say that he could be cured? But cure my ass. No matter how good-looking Fu Ming was, he could not take care of himself for 2 out of 3 days. His clothes were dirty, and his snot was all over his sleeves. No matter how good-looking he was, she was disgusted. Widow's son felt that there was not much hope for him to be cured and did not want to care about him at all. But he was her man after all. Weren't they bullying her by beating him up in the village? Village chief. I heard that the person who hit her was from another village. This outsider has already bullied our village. You can't let her off. Do you think there's no one in our village? She even dares to hit someone in front of you. Who does she think she is? The village chief frowned. Madame Zhong walked over and said, "You can't say that. Your Fu Ming was the one who caused this trouble first. She came to our village to stay for the night and was about to leave early in the morning. However, your Fu Ming insisted on stopping her. His words were unpleasant, like a lecture. No wonder she was infuriated. The village chief pulled her back. After all, the person who was injured now was from his own village. As the village chief's wife, how could she stand on the side of outsiders? What would the villagers think of him?" Madame Zhang snorted, but she did not say anything else. She just did not like Widow Sunday. In the past, she even wanted to seduce her man. Who did she think she was? The village chief coughed lightly and said, "The person who hit him is now in the West Wing. This matter indeed needs to be discussed properly. However, both sides are indeed at fault. Although I'm the village chief of Fugue village, I have to be reasonable." Widow Sun turned around and left. After leaving the room, she looked around. Seeing that there were two familiar villagers guarding outside the door, she walked over in a few steps. The two villagers did not stop her. Widow Sun pushed the door open and entered. Yundong looked up and saw Widow Sun's expression. Chapter 250. Counter Blackmail. Yundong kicked her knee. Widow Sun stumbled and fell to her knees. Yundong took the opportunity to cover her mouth to prevent her from calling out to the person at the door. Then she kicked her twice and placed a dagger on her neck. Widow Sun held her breath. She had wanted to grab Yundong's hand, but did not dare to move. The dagger was cold and sharp. If she had moved a little, her neck would have bled. At this moment, there was a knock on the door and Madame Zhang's voice. "Widow Sun, don't mess around. Come out and talk." "Andy, we're fine. We'll go out in a while." Yundong spoke first. She let go of Widow Sun's mouth and wiped her saliva on her clothes in disdain. She said to Widow Sun, who was about to say something, "Don't scream. If you scare me, my hands will tremble uncontrollably." Widow Sun wanted to nod, but she did not dare to. She could only say softly, "You don't be rash. Killing is illegal. You'll go to prison. Think about it. You're still so young. If you go to the prison, it will be difficult for you to get married in the future." Yundong nodded seriously. "Isn't that so? So eat this." Before Widow Sun could understand what she was saying, she felt as if something had been stuffed into her mouth. Yundong's knife approached, and she lifted her chin. She swallowed it. Then her eyes widened. What did you feed me?" "Poison, my Li Su. Omnipotent medicine." Yundong had already moved the dagger away. Widow Sun hurriedly bent down and grabbed her throat. She vomited for a long time, but her face was red and she could not vomit. She looked at Yundong with reddened eyes. "You want to kill me?" "Of course not. I have no grudge against you. I was just frightened by you. I was afraid that the villagers would not let us leave, so I could only poison you first and treat you as a hostage. When we leave, I will naturally tell you the way to detoxify the poison." Widow Sun opened her mouth and wanted to call the people outside, but she was afraid of death. What if she angered this person and this person didn't tell her how to detoxify the poison? Yundong looked at her expression and confirmed that she was a person who was very afraid of death. Previously, when Chong Fu was fed with my Li Su, he would at least be suspicious. It took her a few scares to bend him. However, when she said that it was poison, the one in front of her immediately believed her without any doubt. Widow Sun glared at Yundong angrily. "I didn't expect you to be so vicious at such a young age. We're outside. If we're not vicious, wouldn't we be bullied by you, just like before?" Yundong squatted in front of her. "Now it's time to talk about my compensation. What compensation do you want?" "Look, we were supposed to leave early in the morning, but your man stopped us and delayed us. My time is very precious. You have to compensate me. He even went crazy and wanted to smash me to death with a hoe. I'm still so frightened that my heart is beating wildly. You have to compensate me. Also, you threatened and pushed my mother just now, scaring her. You must compensate for that too. I'm kind-hearted and don't want much. Just take out all the silver on you. She couldn't possibly go to Widow Sun's house. She didn't have the time. Widow Sun did not want to give it to her, but she was poisoned. When Yundong said that the poison would act up in half an hour, she hurriedly took out the silver from her sleeve. Yundong frowned and looked at the 5 taels of silver in her hand. What else? No, that's all. It'll get right away. 1. Chapter 251. Fu Ming wakes up. Yundong saw her sitting on the ground, pressing down on the fat on her stomach. She took off her shoes with some difficulty and took out a banknote worth 5 taels from under her shoes and handed it over. Yundong was speechless. Damn it, her eyes hurt from the smoke. Madame Yang quickly went forward and covered her nose. Dong, come here. She's releasing poison. Yundong felt that her mother's words were very vivid. She immediately waved her hand. Keep it well. I don't want it. It was too smelly. There was nowhere to put it. Widow Sun hurriedly stuffed the banknotes back into her shoes and put them on. Yundong frowned. She had spent so much effort and wasted one of her Mylisu pills, but she had only received 5 taels of silver. Widow Sun glanced at her. You can give me the antidote now, right? What are you thinking about? Yundong snorted. Get up. Go out and tell the others to let us go. When we leave safely, we will naturally tell you the way to detoxify the poison. Widow Sun was angry, but she did not dare to say anything. She did not know if it was a psychological effect. She felt that her body was in so much pain. Could it be that there would be other pain before the poison acted up? She did not dare to delay and hurriedly got up to open the door. Just as the 2 people at the door were wondering why there was no movement inside, they saw Widow Sun come out with a dark expression. The village chief and Madame Zhong were also outside. Seeing her come out, Madame Zhong hurriedly entered the house to take a look. Yundong was bringing Madame Yang out. Seeing that the 2 of them were fine, she heaved a sigh of relief. On the other side, the village chief was lecturing Widow Sunday. I've already said that he'll handle this matter. Why are you adding to the mess? Since you don't care about me as the village chief, don't look for me in the future. Widow Sun quickly smiled and said, No, I was just thinking that this is a small matter. I'm looking for them to discuss how to resolve it. Look, it's settled now. We've already agreed. Village chief, quickly let them go. I heard that they're in a hurry. The village chief. What the hell? Madame Zhong was speechless. Was Widow Sun trying to seduce her man again? She was smiling so fawningly. She glared at Widow Sun and hurriedly asked Yundong, She didn't bully you? Yundong shook his head. No, Annie's son is still very reasonable. We told her what happened and apologized. She especially understood that it was not easy for us 2 weak women. She knew that we have urgent matters to attend to, so she said that she would explain to you personally and not pursue the matter. Widow Sun could not help but tremble. Apologize? Weak women? This brat was too good at acting. Chapter 252. Departure. The village chief hurriedly went in to take a look. The others also went over one after another. Yundong did not really want to go, but Madame Zhong dragged her there. There were 2 thick layers of bandages on Fu Ming's forehead. At this moment, he opened his eyes and looked at the person standing by the bed. In the end, her gaze landed on Widow Sunday. Widow Sun frowned. This bastard had better not cause trouble at this time and not let the Gu family's mother and daughter leave. She still had to detoxify the poison. In the next moment, Fu Ming suddenly curled his fingers and chuckled. Wife, I'm hungry. Everyone saw that he had become a fool again. They couldn't ask for his opinion now, so Widow Sun had the final say. Since she did not mind, and there was nothing wrong with Fu Ming, they could not hold on to 2 weak women. Besides, it was indeed Fu Ming who provoked her first. She was about to leave, but he insisted on stopping her and saying something inappropriate. The villagers left one after another. Widow Sun was very anxious. She asked Yundong, "You guys should leave quickly too." "All right, we're leaving soon." They had indeed wasted a lot of time. Today, they were going to speed up again. Seeing that there was no problem, Madame Zhong quickly carried the small jar out to her. "Here, take it. If you pass by here again in the future, it'll marinate another jar for you. It won't take much effort." "Thank you, Aunt." Yundong had left a small bag of white sugar in the house. The village chief and Madame Zhong treated them well. Even if such a thing happened, they did not speak ill of them. Madame Zhong even tipped them off and helped them criticize Widow Sunday. White sugar was indeed expensive outside, but this was the most she had now. It was not shabby to give it away. Widow Sun was extremely anxious. Why was he still talking at a time like this? Was there no end to it? Madame Zhong glanced at her suspiciously, but Yundong smiled and got into the carriage. Widow Sun had been following beside the carriage. When Madame Zhong could no longer see them, she asked, "Where's the antidote? Do you think I'm stupid to give it to you without leaving the village?" Yundong sat on the shaft of the carriage and said slowly, "Wait here for half an hour. When the time comes, he'll write a method to detoxify the poison and place it under the second tree at the entrance of the village. He'll press it with a rock. But I can't read. Can't you find someone you know to read to you? Anyway, it doesn't matter if others see the antidote." Widow Sun could only stop in her tracks. "You have to keep your word." "Of course. You've already let me go. Wouldn't I be courting death if I harmed your life again?" Yundong shook the reins, and the carriage immediately sped up. Widow Sun paced back and forth for a while before she could not take it anymore. She could not wait for more than half an hour. It did not take long for her to catch up. When she reached the village entrance and found the second tree, she saw a note. Widow Sun quickly took it out and rushed to the village chief's house. Madame Zhong was tidying up the guest room when she saw the bag of white sugar. She took it out to study it with the village chief. "What the hell is this?" "I don't know." Madame Zhong shook her head, then suddenly slapped her head. "By the way, there was a small note under it at that time. Take a look at what was written on it." The village chief quickly took it and read with narrowed eyes, "White sugar. You can make sugar water or use it as a seasoning to make sweet food. Thank you for your hospitality." Madame Zhong was delighted. "White sugar. The Gu family's girl gave us white sugar. It's so white. It must be very expensive." Before she could finish speaking, Widow Sun's noisy voice came from the door. Madame Zhong hurriedly put away the white sugar and covered it under the blanket. The next moment, she saw her barge in. The village chief's expression was ugly. "What do you want now?" Chapter 253. Completely crippled Widow Sun was panting. She did not care about his expression and hurriedly took out the paper and handed it over. "Quick, help me see what's written on it." The village chief took it impatiently. "Ah," he said. The words on it were written with charcoal, just like the note Madame Zhong had brought just now. He raised his head and glanced at Widow Sun strangely. The latter was extremely anxious. "Why are you looking at me? Hurry up and read it. Can't you be a little nicer when you're begging?" The village chief snorted and began to read the words on it. "My Lisu. It's a candy. It tastes great. Take it as a snack and drink more water, and it will keep you in good health. You have to admit that you're too old. If you're sick in the head, treat it quickly. See you again." He chuckled. "Who wrote this? It's quite poetic." Widow Sun's face was ashen, and her fingers were trembling. However, she still asked unwillingly, "That's all? Is there nothing else?" "That's it. B asterisk TCH, big B asterisk TCH, little B asterisk TCH. You actually lied to me. You actually lied to me." Widow Sun snatched the paper from the village chief's hand and tore it into pieces. She was still angry and stomped on it a few more times, almost creating a hole in the village chief's soil. The next moment, she suddenly raised her head and asked with a grimace, "Who are that mother and daughter surnamed Gu? Where do they live? Where are they going?" The village chief frowned. "How would I know? How could you not know?" Madame Zhong said angrily, "Be reasonable. She's only here to stay for the night. She left immediately after the night. Why would she tell us these things? Ah, widow's son screamed, turned around, and ran out. She had to ask Fu Ming. Fu Ming must know where the mother and daughter lived in Yundong village. He must know. Widow's son waited for Fu Ming to wake up, but after that, Fu Ming never woke up again. Later on, Widow's son found out that he was not even a man. She was so angry that she smashed more than half of the pots and pans in the kitchen. That day, the doctor was only in a hurry to help Fu Ming look at the wound on his head. At that time, the blood flow was so shocking that even the surrounding people forgot that he had been hit by Yundong in the crotch. When Fu Ming woke up, he became a fool again. He only felt uncomfortable down there and didn't know how to say it. As a result, he delayed the treatment and became a cripple in some aspect. Widow's son couldn't take it anymore and chased Fu Ming out. However, even though Fu Ming was retarded, he still remembered Widow's son's house. He could find it himself. He even became irritable. If Widow's son chased him away again, he would hit her. Then, Widow's son starved him and kept him cold. She tried to trick him into leaving Fugue village. Chapter 254. Dr. Song is here. The last time they came to Qing'an Prefecture, they did not enter the city gate. This time, he did, but the prefectural city here was much more desolate than the Xian'er Prefecture. It couldn't be helped. It hadn't been long since the chaos last year. It was said that not only was the prefecture magistrate killed in the Qing'an Prefecture, but many of the wealthy and influential people in the city had also become fat meat for those bandits. They directly barged into other people's residences to kill and snatch. The civilians were even more in trouble. Those who dodged quickly escaped, but those who did not could only be killed when they encountered those inhumane bandits. The refugees only snatched things, but it was also easy to get into conflicts. Many of them were killed or injured. That chaos had caused the Qing'an Prefecture to suffer heavy losses. Yundong led the carriage all the way and saw that many shops on the street had been destroyed and had to be renovated. There were many stalls along the way. Yundong bought some food from Madame Yang and inquired about the location of Huimin Medical Center. Huimin Medical Center seemed to be quite famous. Soon, someone pointed ahead and said, "Walk to the end here and turn left. You'll reach it after walking for a while." Yundong thanked him and sped up. She did not know if Dr. Song was in Qing'an Prefecture. She hoped that he had already arrived and that he had not left. When they arrived at Huimin Medical Center, Yundong saw that there were many people waiting outside. A waiter saw her and quickly asked her to park the carriage at the side before queuing up. Yundong saw that her carriage was blocking the way, so she quickly led it to the side and parked it. Then, she brought Madame Yang to the shop assistant side. "Little brother, I'm looking for the shopkeeper of your medical center." The waiter was stunned for a moment. He looked at Yundong, who was half a head shorter than him. "Little brother?" The shop assistant tried his best to ignore the way she addressed him. He coughed lightly and said, "Who are you? Why are you looking for a shopkeeper?" "I came from the Xian'er Prefecture. Doctor, he introduced me." As he spoke, Yundong took out a letter from his sleeve. "This is Dr. He's personal letter." The shop assistant knew that there was a Dr. He in the Xian'er Prefecture. He had been here last time. He hurriedly led Yundong inside. "Wait here for a while. He'll go look for the shopkeeper." With that, he took Yundong's letter and ran to the backyard. After a while, the shop assistant came out. "Our shopkeeper invites you in. Follow me." Yundong brought Madame Yang and followed the shop assistant into the backyard. The manager of Huimin Medical Center was a middle-aged man in his 40s.